No, I shouldn't even be here. You have a panel that actually enjoyed the movie. What am I doing here?
I like
Hey, Anima,
cheese.
I got something to tell you. You ready?
This is how it is today. This is how it is today on Pop Culture Minefield. This is how it is. This is how it is today on Pop Culture Minefield. Today on Pop Culture Minefield.
Yay, the show has started. God, that was a long intro. I don't mind, though. I enjoy that. Gives me a few seconds of respite before we have to start talking to all you people watching right now. Currently, we're just at 14, but that'll grow soon. We got Penny in the house. Let's see who else has joined us. Lord Thoth is here. All hail Lord Thoth. Connie Cleary is here today. Hello, Connie. It's been a few weeks. And of course, Josh Coe is here. And from what I understand, he is free. He's always free. So we got a special guest here today. We got my friend Patrick Jordan, former chief of the Sheriff's Department of Los Angeles, retired. And
Hello, guys. Yeah.
how many did you get before you retired? How many years?
How many
was it?
years? 38 years.
Yeah. God,
Just a little
man,
bit of time.
That's a long career, dude. Yeah, you started then right in the early 80s, right?
83. I was 21.
83.
And went to 59 years old. Yeah. So it was a long time. Yeah. I lived through the war on crime, the war on drugs, meaning crack, and broken windows theory, broken windows, community policing, the beginning of fentanyl, the methamphetamine. So, oh yeah, it's good grist for my other
That's a
show.
story.
So
Career, yeah, heck yeah. I was just telling folks what happened to me when the riots broke out after Rodney King, and it impacted us up there because I worked in the Bay Area.
yeah.
Aside from being in the Army Reserves, I also worked as a respiratory technician and paramedic. And I got sent up on a night call that night. That shit went down, and I was told not to get out of my vehicle and to drive my ass out of Oakland and send somebody who wasn't white. And I went, you got it. I think the only thing that saved me was the fact that I'm wearing scrubs and a lab coat. So it was obvious I was medical.
Yeah.
But that was a scary night. I had a guy try to open my passenger door, and I was in a Toyota that auto locked all doors when you got in. And I was like going, oh, thank God I had that auto lock on there, because like that guy tried to get in my passenger door. I was like, fuckity fuck. But you had to serve during that period, and I bet that was hairy.
Well, I was actually serving near Universal Studios. I ran a cadre of folks that policed the studios and City Walk, if you guys have ever been there at the time. And so it was a nice area, but I put my vest on. I had 3 guns in the office, and I wore them all the way home just in case, because they would, you could get followed, and
yep.
And I'm thinking I was a gas guy, right? So I knew how to launch the gas grenades and all that stuff. So I figured, okay, they're going to pull me, they're going to deploy me. Nope, I was told to stay there and defend the studio. So what did I do during the war of the riots? I made sure all the rich people and the stars were safe. So
It's a dirty job, but somebody's got
that's
to.
yeah. Everybody was saying thank you for the
Somebody's gonna
service,
do
sir.
it,
I felt
yeah.
so bad, It's like, oh my God, and I went down to the areas that were impacted in LA. It was pretty rough in certain areas, particularly in some areas of Hollywood and Koreatown got hit, and yeah, it was pretty, you know, it was pretty bad. You could see LA has a series of mountains and valleys. So if you got into a mountain area, you could see the city burning, and it was pretty bad. Then we had Rodney King 2. It wasn't quite as bad. I did get deployed for that, but they wouldn't let me shoot any tear gas. I was so disappointed.
No tear gas. But
Yeah.
that's the fun stuff.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's literal eye candy.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, it was the gas grenade was really it was just an Ithaca shotgun that had a propellant shell, right? And then you had a cone on the top, and you would just drop the grenade in and just shoot it like the shotgun. Obviously you were raising the elevation to where you want it to go, and that's really all it was a shotgun with some modifications to launch gas grenades. But people would see that with the big cone on the front, and they're thinking, "Oh my God, they're bringing in the bazookas." So,
bazooka. But let's talk a little bit about this film, because I know, like, the real life operation was a lot less spectacular than what they show in the film, but that's because it's a film. They had to sex it up, and make it a little more exciting. But I know that, like, Gene Hackman had issues playing. The real guy's name is Eddie Egan, but in film it's Jimmy Popeye Doyle. And his partner's name in the movie is Russo, but in real life it was Grosso, right? Grosso.
Yeah, Grasso.
And he's the subject in this film with Doyle, or Popeye, because that was his nickname, is Popeye, Eddie Egan. But he also got another film called The 7-Ups, which you and I are both fans of, and you did talk about it too. And we need to do it sometime, because I just love that movie, The 7-Ups. It's the same character I think it's after the events, because they both got deployed separately to different divisions after what went down there.
Grasso went into production afterwards. He produced a few things.
They both kind of did a lot of film and TV work.
Yes, they did.
As time went by.
Because Egan was in, besides being in the movie here, both of them were in this movie. Egan was in something else. I can't remember the name of the movie now. I did it. I can't remember what it was. So, but yeah, and I did read that about Hackman and these guys. And you have to keep in mind, these guys were, they were the stars. They were a couple of they were legendary in the NYPD. I had a couple of NYPD guys on both shows, the 7-Up and this show here, and I think I had some NYPD guys. I did Prince of the City as well, and they talked about them. They were rock stars on NYPD at the time and legendary for a couple decades afterwards.
Yeah, and this movie, along with Serpico, were the final nail in the coffin of the genial Irish cop on the beat sort of cop movie. This is a new era. You can definitely see.
Yeah, somewhere between this film and the stuff that, oh my God, the guy that you and I talk about all the time, Patrick, wrote Police Story. Oh my God.
Oh, Joseph Wamba. Joseph Wamba.
Wamba, between this movie and Wamba, those two, Eddie Egan and Wamba, helped change the way policemen were shown in film and television.
Yes.
And it started the realism period for law enforcement, the ugly side, including even Serpico.
The anti-hero kind of thing for some of them, with Clint Eastwood and Dirty Harry and, because even Wamba stuff, so these are flawed men, mostly men portrayed in those. but they were doing what we said the Lord's work, right? And but you get to see they're no. It's no longer, probably the best way to say is they're no longer Joe Friday, right? It's you see the ugly side, and I think the New Centurions shows it a little bit, where you see how the working on the streets can impact people in terms of alcoholism, police suicides, and other things, which I've actually done on my other show.
The whole self-deletion thing was
Yeah.
really prevalent in the New Centurions. And that was with George C. Scott, as I recall, right? And a young Eric Estrada is in that. I remember
Eric Estrada
before he got his teeth fixed.
Stacy Keach was
yes,
yeah, George C. Scott's partner in that one, and he gets killed in the end. So yeah, so the anti-hero,
such
or
a good film.
The flawed hero is probably the way to say it.
Yeah, the other thing that's interesting about this, even over most other police procedural type movies around the early 70s, is if you've ever heard a character in a movie say, detective work is 90%, boredom. The middle of this movie shows you how much effort, how much work goes into a surveillance operation and how boring it is. Because they're made fairly early on by the suspects that they're pursuing, these people. And so it becomes a cat and mouse game.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's from the point of view of looking at it from a police operations point of view, it's an eye opener. Because they can't afford to let these guys get away from them, even though now these guys know they're being followed. They even know who's following them. They recognize individual cops. So it becomes a very difficult job.
The interesting thing is we had a cocaine dealer in L.A., Freeway Ricky Ross, who was very prolific and $100 million selling. But even though we were chasing him, LAPD was chasing him, the feds were chasing him, he kept doing it. The money was so good. And that's why when you see these guys, they're getting pursued, the money in dope is so good that they're willing to take the risk. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying. They know they're being followed. You have to assume when you're in the dope trade that, because think about it, you're selling to people who are using. The strategy is to get the street dealer and work your way up the chain. So somebody's going to betray you, right? The cops are going to come into your life. That's why in the great movie The Godfather, he didn't want anything to do with heroin, right? Because he knows eventually it's going to be corrupted. So you have to know it's happening, right?
Well, Goodfellas hinges on
that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what starts.
Well, there's this sense of paranoia these guys. I mean, if you ever read up on some of the things these guys would do, that they would talk with each other outside, they would always cover their mouths with something. So it would be harder to eavesdrop or even read their lips what they're saying. And these guys were constantly looking in windows, looking for reflections, looking for people. And you see that in this film a couple times. And in particular, the Frenchman, who in actual reality was a Corsican, and he kept stopping at shops and looking, and he was watching for Eddie Egan or Popeye Doyle in the film. And now in the film, they don't show him killed, but in reality, the Frenchman got away, as I recall. He actually escaped. He
escaped U.S. justice. He got caught in France and prosecuted there, but was not extradited.
Yeah, for what he had done here, but it's really clever, and they show in the film how the way they would break down the vehicle normally and look for packages in the hollow spaces, but in the film they show that they went a step further and started pulling equipment apart. And that's when they find the junk in there.
Yeah.
Now Anima had a question for me, and I don't know the answer here, and I was hoping maybe you knew. What is that liquid they use, a chemical agent that they use to identify the junk? And
I don't
turns
know.
Red.
I'm not a dope guy, so I don't know that one. I'm not a dope guy.
I tried
looking it up, and you just can't find any info on it.
Yeah. I'm just curious.
Before we continue, I would like to address this. We have a new member. It's Lester San Jose, the Skeptic Tank. Thank you and welcome, my friend.
Yes, absolutely. We're glad you're here. I also want to address other people who've jumped in here because we got more people jumping in. We got Cam is here. Let's see. I saw somebody else jump in too. Who was it? Well, of course, Lester.
Oh, Read by Nature.
Christian Delorme is here, our good French Canadian friend. Bonjour, mon ami. Slasher Fred is here. It's good to see you, Slasher. And I think that I got it. Oh, Read by Nature. Yes, Read by Nature. Gary, they were using counter surveillance techniques like you would be taught in intel and counter intel. Actually, in the military, we were taught to, if you're driving a vehicle and I was an ambulance commander, you had to make sure you weren't being followed. And so we learned all of those techniques of, it's just basically ways of like turn left again. You know, if they turn left with you a second time, that's still a chance. But if they do it a third time, they're following you.
Yeah.
And that's the rule you're taught.
Courtney's in the house.
Here. Hi, Courtney.
And
I don't know.
Rod Thunderheart.
I don't know what the liquid was, but I did read that they tested actual heroin, not a baby powder or cornstarch substitute.
That was actual heroin in the film.
What?
Yeah,
Holy
the
shit.
sample they tested was real.
Yeah.
Wow.
70s, man.
No,
Well, the cops were
Friedkin.
helping with the making of that film, so I'm assuming
but
they were in
still.
control of it.
Right.
No, Friedkin
That's crazy.
on To Live and Die in L.A., he actually used the counterfeit money after they made it. Like the guy he got was so good. And he was actually got asked about him, like, I don't know anything about it. And then, as soon as the statute of limitations was like, yeah, this movie is so good, I was just using it around town. Fuck the police. Crazy guy, man. But made some great
Friedkin?
movies.
Well, he's, look, I'm sorry we lost him because he's really one of the great directors, modern directors. And, but we have an interview with him, and I think they even bring up the slapping thing that he would do. I think I can turn my camera on now. It's done uploading, Martin.
Yes,
So
I'm getting
on
it
the
now.
server. By the way, we had a video footage the other night, and I cracked Greg up because he had the most recent footage of John Carpenter because he is now included in the new The Thing extended. And he's doing new additional interviews and discussions for this new DVD. So he appears in the new trailer for this new extended version of The Thing that has all this breakdown. And it opens up on him, and I told him to pause the video when he did it. And I pointed out, yes, John Carpenter has officially become David Lopan. Because if you look at him now, he looks like David Lopan from the movie Big Trouble in Little China.
Yes,
does
he
his
does.
wife have green eyes?
I don't know. You can ask him. So Curtis Selby is here. What is up, man? We got some good people dropping in here. We're already up to 37. Glad you guys are here to watch. I know by the end of the day, we'll have had 200 people watch the show today. And especially because this is a great film. Now, they tried to say that this is the father of chase films. I went, no, it is not. The father of chase films was a little film shot in 1969 with Steve McQueen called Bullet. Which is just another great cop film. I love that movie. Do
you know where Steve McQueen got the camera work ideas for Bullet?
I have no idea.
From John Frankenheimer.
Oh, I'm not surprised. John Frankenheimer.
Well, Frankenheimer did one I've never seen. I'm going to have to watch it one of these days, which is Ronin in the 80s.
I love Ronin.
But in 1966, Frankenheimer also directed Grand Prix. And created the very first situation where cameras were mounted on the cars.
Yep, for the race
Ronin,
scenes.
he said, Frankenheimer actually said in an interview that Ronin was basically just all of the camera techniques from Grand Prix applied to a car chase instead of an auto race.
Right.
And it influenced chases ever after. This one had
because that was the first time they'd ever done that. And that's why Bullet is the father of the modern chase film. And the father of buddy cop films. Now let's see if Patrick knows this one. Do you know what film is the father of the buddy cop film?
Well, I would say 48 Hours is the one that, but it's probably before that.
Way before that. It's in the 70s. A little film called Freebie and the Bean,
Freebie
which
and the
is one of
Bean.
my favorite films of all time.
You know,
When
the stunt driver on this chase scene was also a stunt driver in Bullet, and also the stunt driver in 7 Up, Bill Hickman.
Bill
By
Hickman.
the way,
And Bill Hickman is in the movie, by the way. Also, he plays the Fed agent that gives Popeye Doyle shit all the time in the film.
He's in those other movies too. He's in Bullet as the one of the assassin and driver, and same
He's
with
actually
7
a
Up.
good actor.
Same
He's
with
another
7
a
Up.
good actor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He was one of the bad guys in Bullet. But the one of the regular rank and file stuntmen on this went on to have quite a career, and that was the man who his directorial debut was Smokey and the Bandit.
Ah,
nice.
Oh, okay. Now I will tell you that Hackman did do some of his driving in this. In fact, he's the one. They had what ended up happening. It's not true guerrilla filmmaking, but Friedkin did something akin to guerrilla filmmaking that they didn't actually get the permits for some of these chase scenes, but the city police were actually helping them, and they would block off streets and shit for the chase scene, and they would have stunt drivers out there. But there was an oversight mistake when he gets hit by that car, T-bone. It's actually a guy that had just gotten in the car to drive to work and hits Hackman driving the car. And Hackman does that stunt where he slams up against the pillar and does just shitloads of damage to that car. And it was such a great moment that Friedkin kept it in the film. But I don't think the guy got hurt, but he definitely didn't get to work on time that day.
With the exception of the lady with the stroller and the baby, which was a preset rehearsed stunt.
Yeah, it was a preset stunt.
The end of the chase is in uncontrolled traffic because they drove out of their controlled area where they had control of the street lights.
And that's where it becomes
traffic.
Guerrilla filmmaking. And
Yes.
Friedkin, I love Friedkin, man. I love him. I love his films. I love the way he directed. I had problems with the way he would but I understand why he did it. Like in The Exorcist, he was trying to get the priest because he's not an actor; he's a priest. He's a real priest. He had real clergy in that freaking movie. The Catholic Church supported the production of The Exorcist, and they said they would only do it if they agreed to not make it another Rosemary's Baby where evil wins, and they concurred and went with that. But in that final scene where Damien has fallen down those stairs and he's dying at the base of the stairs, and his best friend, who's played by a real priest, is supposed to give him his last rites. When they started shooting the scene, Friedkin wasn't getting the performance he wanted out of this priest. So he walked up to him and he asked these questions. He goes, "Do you trust me?" And the priest says, "Yes, of course I do." And he fucking open hand slapped him so fucking hard. And then said, "Action." So when you see that moment when he kneels down and his hand's shaking, that was shaking because he had just gotten belted by the director.
Hey, Gary, read the private chat, please.
Must not have been an Irish guy, an Irish priest. Hit him back.
He was.
No.
He was. He was. He was an Irish priest.
No, not in that.
Trust this.
Well, that's fine. You can just share it. You can just share the video.
Yeah, this is probably the single most dangerous car chase scene ever filmed because they went outside of the controlled area. And there were actual, like you said, a guy on his way to work who had no idea. The only thing they had,
pulled out.
The only thing they had as a warning was they put a flashing light on top of the chase car. That's it.
Now, in real life, this actor here is Spanish, but he's also fluent in French, and
I think he's.
I don't know. I do believe he's Spanish. I think he was from Spain. I looked it up yesterday and read that to Anima. And Marseille is a French island, and people who are from there are referred to as Corsican, but they are still French citizens, even though they're a mixture of Spanish and Italian.
Yeah, he was a famous Spanish actor. That was
Fernando Rey. Yes.
Yes,
I
Fernando
saw him
Rey.
a lot when I was a little kid.
I'm going to bet because he was speaking Spanish, right?
Your powers of observation, Gary, are.
Are you
It's more or less.
Gary?
I'm just taking a piss on Martin about being from Venezuela. It's like,
are you insinuating, Gary, that Martin is not fluent in French?
Are you insinuating?
I cannot speak it,
French?
but I can understand it.
Yep. By the way, I've also been to Marseille, Courtney, and it's beautiful. I loved it there. It's the only place I got to go to that was off the continental Europe.
Well,
I wanted to go. What is it? Rick's Cafe was at what is that? At Casablanca. We had a chance to go there, and we ended up not being able to go due to time constraints.
That's a pity.
I've always wanted to go there. It's just I've been a fan of that place since I was a kid.
Hey, Awesome One is here.
Yeah, Frog 1 and Frog 2. That's right.
Yeah.
Frog 1 and Frog 2. And of course, French Canadians I refer to as faux frogs.
Comme ça va?
But Slasher Fred, what do you say? Speaking of The Exorcist, in the director's cut, they also cut scene where Reagan is at the dinner party. Yeah, that's a messy scene. It's kind of bizarre. It's in the special cut. They included in that, and they included the staircase scene, which I don't know. It still looks weird and unrealistic to me. So I would have been fine with them leaving it out, which is why I think Friedkin left it out in the first place.
Yeah, he never did a director's cut. It's just, something they released.
Well, it's something that Kurt Kermode did, because I met him years ago before he did the documentary, and I helped him do his Blade Runner documentary, On the Edge of Blade Runner. And him, he's a sharp dude. We're politically diverse, but we didn't have to talk politics. We talk movies, and it's a really knowledgeable guy, and I like his documentaries. And he did the best Exorcist documentary there is. So, but Frog 1, Frog 2, I love that. That's their call signs that they give to the two French guys.
Yeah.
Now, Sonny Grosso, his real name is Salvatore Anthony Grosso. And just down to earth fucking Italian. And he and Eddie Egan were the real cops that these two are based on. And they were very directly involved with the making of this film. They were the advisors for the film. Plus, they're in the movie.
In the movie, yep.
Grosso plays one of the feds, and not the one that Popeye Doyle shoots. That's actually, what's his name? The stuntman.
Hickman, yeah.
Hickman. Hickman played that agent. But he is the one that plays the fed that gets caught looking at the bad guy. When the guy turns, does it twice. Gets caught looking at him like, God damn, dude, direct eye contact. What the fuck? And I'm assuming that he did that to show, I think that was a personal dig at the feds that were working with him, that they weren't very good at surveillance.
Yeah, and it's and nowadays, I mean, that's a lot of what mostly they do. I mean, back when in the 60s, 70s, I mean, they did some of that, but they were also,
this took place, by the way, in 62, right?
Right. Their big claim to fame, what made the FBI big was, Public Enemy #1, going after the bank robbers. And they were still in that mode. They have since switched to more intelligence kind of things since September 11th. So they do a lot more surveillance than they used to. But
they also did surveillance from vehicles a lot of the time.
Yeah, right. But if you're doing, like, if you're a local, then this is your backyard, right? You do it all the time in your backyard. But if you're a fed, particularly if you're coming from another city, your knowledge of the streets, your knowledge of the train cars, knowledge of the buses is limited. And so you struggle, right? So that's, and we actually talked, when I did this movie, we actually talked about the surveillance techniques with New York detective who did surveillance in New York, and he said, "Yeah, it's really hard because in L.A., we could use helicopters. You have to use a car if you're dealing drugs in L.A., right? So you can, so you can use helicopters, you can use multiple cars to follow people. But if you're on the street, I mean, like we were seeing earlier, Popeye Doyle's following somebody, right? And Doyle's got his signature cap on, right? That ain't gonna work because you got to change up your.
Is it called a pie?
Yeah, I mean, I see a hat like that. You recognize that, a mile away, right? So you're constantly changing. You want to look nondescript, right? And he looks very. So there, it's just a challenge, and we talked about specifically where he Frog One.
Pork pie hat. Pork pie.
Yeah,
hat.
he gets away from Doyle, but he also makes sure Doyle knows that he's following him, right? And Doyle's limited because he's following him by himself. He says, "Yeah, there's no way you can do a surveillance like that by yourself." And so it's very difficult to do a surveillance on foot in New York, a place like Manhattan. The more spread out you get, you can use other resources and other methods, like I said,
which they do show one of those methods, which is the handoff, where one cop turns a corner, goes another direction, and the other cop takes over and follows him for a while. And then another one does that, and they just stay on him. And that way you kind of shake it up and can break the spell of being followed. Because these guys are paranoid. They're always worried they're being followed. And so, they learned really quick how the cops work and the feds too, which is why, like I brought up, that gangsters notoriously would cover their mouths in public when they're talking to somebody.
Yeah. So you can't read lips. Yeah.
Can't read lips. And it also helps block sound. And they would speak very low. They learned to almost whisper speak in public. Because I've watched all those specials, going back all the way to the 80s, like behind the scenes of Goodfellas and all that stuff. And you actually hear the feds talk about what they would do. And I'm like, I love that stuff. I was fascinated with law enforcement. And the only reason I didn't become a police officer instead of a paramedic was because I got put on that list of people. If you're, what do they call that when they choose race and gender over?
It's affirmative action.
Affirmative action, because even though I had the highest score on the test of anybody, because I was the last person there, I got bumped. And so I went, fuck you, I'll go be a paramedic then. My uncle tried to get me to be a postman like him, and I'm like, nah, it's okay. I don't want to do that. And then I regretted that later, going, God, I would have had a hell of a retirement if I'd become a postman.
They had good pension. Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
You only have to worry about going postal. That's it, so.
That's the only thing, yeah. But let's get into Gene Hackman's issues with this, because he tried to get fired. He'd been there for, I think, less than 2 weeks. I think it was 10 days they'd been shooting. And he's like, let me out of my contract. I'm not right for this part. I have so much trouble with what this guy is. He's a fucking racist. I can't stand this. I can't do this to people. And Friedkin stepped up and just said, we're not going to let you out of the contract. You're perfect for this part. You are this guy. And then Eddie Egan stepped up. And it's that bar rousting scene where you see him just tell all those black guys to get up against the wall and yell at him. And he does that. And it blew Hackman's mind, how controlled that was. But then he kind of took the illusion away from him and said, every single guy in that bar is a cop, off-duty cop. Every single black guy in that bar was an off-duty
all
cop.
Cops.
And it's like, but still just the same, that helped him. And he began to actually have a good rapport with Eddie Egan. And a lot of his ideas about him changed, that he understood that what he perceived as racism is just the fact that he'd been on duty for so long, and you just automatically assume, yeah, that's my guy. And you get to identify guys, and you know that from your years of law enforcement, that you get vibes off of people.
Well, it's Don behaviors.
Don Ecker refers to it as he knows how to read people.
Yeah.
And he could always tell when he was dealing with somebody that was being extremely deceptive, because there are behaviors that go with it. And
it's a cop's hunch that starts the whole case.
Yeah,
but they're just randomly in the bar and they see this table and Popeye says that table is wrong. Yeah. And that's not logical. That's a gut feeling. It's like table is wrong. Let's follow the guy.
There's actually a science behind this, right? Yep. And so after September 11th, I'm flying all over the place because they gave me a security clearance, and I was developing strategies for protecting critical infrastructure transit. And transit, you come and go, and you can't just block things off, right? And so the strategies is you look for behaviors of people. It's a behavioral assessment is what it's called, right? And the Brits use this, and the Israelis use it. And there's a certain tells that people give off when they're put under what they call a cognitive load. And so I'll give you an example. So we trained our guys to look for these different tells, and then we would send a uniformed guy onto a train car, because we had to develop the skill to where you're really good at it. I mean, obviously, like as a seasoned cop, I could see it, but I couldn't really articulate it until I actually read the books about it and got the training on it. But what happens if you present a uniformed or a security posture to somebody, if somebody's there and they want to get away with something, they're going to react differently to you than everybody else. And that's what you're looking for. And when you see that reaction, now you make the contact with them. We would, and we would ask them we'd ask the deputies to ask a series of questions. And based upon those series of questions and how they responded, it indicated whether they were being deceptive or not. So there is a science behind it. And if you're a seasoned cop, you end up understanding, it's there. It's just, for years, I knew it was there. Like you said, it's an intuition. But in reality, you're reading the body language and the reaction of people to you in uniform. Or like, there's a lot of times you're not in uniform, but they know exactly who you are, right? So and so they're reacting to you or somebody that is new that's coming in that they don't know, that they're suspicious of, and so it's that reaction that you're looking for.
Yeah, there is an equal and opposite reaction too, because there's actually videos out there on YouTube that are guys that kind of go around trolling undercover cops, and they'll call them out. Now that guy's an undercover cop. They'll point him out, and the guy's like, "Hey, come here," and they're like, "No, we're gonna keep going."
Did you ever watch like World Series of Poker? So I'll watch that, right? And so everybody's around the table, and you'll see there's a big pot, and one guy will start chipping at the other guy, and the other guy's got the glasses on, and he's trying to avoid responding because he knows his body language response might give him away, right? Well, that chipping at him he's trying to put that cognitive load on. That's what I'm seeing happening. And so obviously the real good guys they mask their response and they stick with their hand, right? But you can see that play out in the World Series of Poker, where one person's trying to not react and the other person's trying to put pressure on them to react, so they get a better idea of what they're holding. It's interesting stuff.
Rouse scene? Is this the Rouse scene? I think this is the Rouse scene and what Popeye did is the real Popeye walked in there and he says, "You know who I am? Who am I? You're Popeye." He goes, "Yeah, get against the wall."
Yeah.
Everybody against the wall, and everybody just fucking moved. That was really awesome. And so Gene Hackman took that lead and followed what he did, and I think it's great cinema. And I think this is a good representation of law enforcement in New York and in other major cities too, because they all kind of get the same behavior and attitudes over time. And some people refer to
question.
What?
The thing is talking about, like, don't touch you touching your feet. Like, what is that insinuating? Because it's a little archaic for me.
Don't touch your feet.
But it was odd. My understanding, from what I read, is that Popeye's specialty in a good cop, bad cop interrogation is his partner would ask logical, reasonable questions.
Oh, and he would ask stupid ones, yeah.
And then he would ask off-the-wall questions that would be a
Have
surprise.
You ever been to Poughkeepsie?
Poughkeepsie?
Yeah. You've been picking your feet in Poughkeepsie?
I'm going, what is going on?
Yeah. I mean, it's just to get them off balance, and
Yep.
they weren't trying to do the intimidate and be your friend. They were doing this guy's easy to talk to.
Straight
This
cop,
guy's
crazy cop.
yeah, and this guy's nuts. So I'll talk to the same guy, and that's how they did their interrogations, and they would get him to open up about things they probably shouldn't have said anything about.
Right.
The FBI started the profiling program. Reed, I saw your comment about Robbie Coltrane was in the show Cracker, which they brought to America. It wasn't as big a hit here, the American version, but I like the British version with Robbie Coltrane, and he's based off a criminal profiler. And what it is the head of human behavioral at the FBI. They're the ones who started the whole profiling program. They would go around to all of the law enforcement agencies, and they went over to England to help teach them how to profile criminals. And the reason why we are able to do that is because of the human behavioral department, which is the same thing they show in the TV series Criminal Minds. It's the same organization group.
I'm still hoping we're going to talk about this one.
I hope so too, because I'm going to go and let the cat out of the bag. My Keith's and my friend Thomas, who is an effects guy for that show, and he's been with that show for a long time, has developed a disease where he's losing his ability to speak, and so we're never going to be able to have him back on the show again because he has trouble speaking, and it broke our hearts. But he's still staying. There's Egan.
Yep.
That's Ed Egan right
that's
there.
Him. I think he plays the captain.
Yeah, he plays their captain. And I love the way he gives him shit in this movie, because apparently I'm guessing that was sort of the way he got treated by his captain.
Can I ask a question about the previous scene?
Yeah.
Because he calls the people in the bar weird names like Baldy and Whiskers. Is that a thing? Did he really do that? I mean, it was funny, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah, probably if he doesn't know his name or if that's what they're calling him on. I can tell you when you go roll up on a scene with a bunch of gangsters and they're out doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. Yeah, everybody's on the wall. Everybody's got their hands on the wall, and you're shaking them all down. That kind of stuff does happen, but usually you know who they are if you're working gangs. You got a pretty good idea who's who in the zoo. I don't know if these were just things that Pop Boy seemed to know all these guys, so maybe there's something he called them all the time.
Yeah, or maybe he just wanted to talk down on them.
Maybe those were their known alias.
No, I'm going to say that's a negative. That's just it, because I've done that too in the military. You like if somebody's like got a little bit of a punch, call him Punch. If a guy's got like a long face, you find something like, "Hey, Banana Head, get over here." That's all that is.
So it is the thing. Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Well, I'm just telling you from the military. If you don't know somebody's name, you call them by how they look. And it is also how drill sergeants come up with such creative nicknames for soldiers.
Oh yeah, well, but drill sergeants, their job is to break people, so they can talk how.
Yeah, but it's the whole dehumanization thing too.
Yeah, but that's not what's going on.
Everybody
here.
does
Those
it.
are just
That's
suspects. That's not.
It's another way of keeping somebody off their natural footing, and so that's why he does it, and goes along with what Patrick was saying a minute ago. Keep and Red Shirt, keeping them off their normal footing. Now here's the car that is packed full of heroin. And they're going to take it to the auction. It's landing here in the United States. And of course, the auction is set up.
Yeah.
Because the person that's going to get that car is the person that's supposed to get that car.
How often in Los Angeles did criminals actually try using celebrities? Because I noticed they use a famous French actor.
Use what?
For the smuggling. They use a famous French actor. That's the guy who's being interviewed at the dock.
But you said something was it smuggling you said?
Yeah. How often do they try using celebrities for smuggling? Did that ever happen in your tenure?
I think celebrities get involved in the dope trade. You've seen it with athletes doing it, and but I think there are people who of the mindset to get involved. It's not like they approach them and say, "Hey, I got a deal for you." They're in the life. They're probably using, and they're dealers getting them connected. So it does happen, but it's
there's
so
an
much.
allure to it because they become friendly and
Yeah,
hanging out with those guys. They're usually fun, crazy.
it's exciting.
High energy.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
You're getting one over on the cop, the man, get one over the man.
The man.
Until he shows up with the handcuffs and takes you away. Then it's like, oh, I don't know, I didn't mean it. It was just one time.
Just an actor.
Just one time.
Yeah, right. And by the way, I love pork pie hats, man. I think they're the coolest looking man hats since the fedora.
Oh,
that is one bad hat, Harry.
Yes, right.
Yeah, the fedora is cool. The pork pie hat makes you look like Mr. Bean.
I got to go back.
Paulie wears that. Paulie wears a pork pie hat. I love when he wears those hats.
We don't talk about that.
Yes, we do. We love that hat. I love it. And by the way, fucking Magnum PI mustache on him now. Holy shit. Right?
I got to go back and talk about Hackman not wanting to do this because it was, he didn't like the violence and all. That was the same thing with Dirty Harry. And this is just the new generation of actors, I think, after World War II, because I don't think you'd have had any actor that had been in World War II or Korea that would have been a little cringy on this stuff. This was the attitudes coming out of the 60s and 70s that, I don't want to do anything.
And it's so funny because he was a Marine, man.
I know, but it's the attitude of the actors changed after a certain point. I mean, I don't think Charles Bronson would have been all that squishy about playing this part. I don't think,
or Lee,
you know what I mean? I mean,
or Lee Marvin would have been,
or Lee Marvin, right?
Yeah,
but because I think Steve McQueen turned down Dirty Harry. I forget who else turned down Dirty, because it was like, oh, I don't think I like the character. It's my image.
Well, it was originally supposed to be Frank Sinatra.
Yeah,
and
even him too.
Sinatra had to turn it down because he had broken his wrist and he couldn't support the Magnum, the 44 Magnum. It's just too heavy. So he tried to can't we just put it down to like a regular 38? They're like, no, Frank. He carries a 44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and it'll blow your head clean off. No, Frank. So that's why we ended up getting other actors running out for that role. But some of them really did turn it down because they thought it was too violent. And I'm like, that's so, I'm sorry, I'm going to use the word, it's pussified. I just think that's pussified as hell. And I just don't understand that mindset where Clint Eastwood was like, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah. Well, even just to point out that for all that Gene Hackman didn't want to do this role when he started, he was trying to get out of the contract. He hated it. He gives one of the best, by the end, he gives one of the best performances of his career as Potboy Doyle.
He got the fucking Oscar for it.
Yeah. I know. I mean, it turned out.
And I've got that video for us to watch today, his acceptance. And this was his first real movie. He has always played secondary characters up to this point. This was the first one that showed who he was as a lead. And I was so fucking happy for him. But what's sad is, he kept trying to go for the award stuff. He kept trying out for that stuff and finally gave up and said, it's really more about the paycheck. And so he started doing roles for the paycheck, and which I think is a smarter move. By the way, we've got some starred comments. What is this one? Yes, someone talking to Bob Hope. Could you take this package for me? Don't open it. Yeah, right. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. But we have some starred comments. Let me get up here to these. Again, I want to thank Lester San Jose, the Skeptic Tank, for becoming a member today. We never gave you a video, so I'm going to give you a video now. You're going to get this one.
Oh, you are so big. Oh, absolutely huge. Gosh, we're all really impressed down here, I can tell you.
Oh, I wanted to give him the Roadhouse.
Oh, no, I wanted to give him that one because I haven't used that one really yet. Let's see. Cam's Crasher. Hello, everyone. Wamba, the new Centurion, is awesome. Completely agree with you, Cam. I think that's one of the things that really got me excited talking with you, Patrick, is your passion for great fucking cop movies and TV shows. And because I can just talk about them all day. I love those classic films. Let's see. Chief Patrick Jordan. Hi, Chief. Rick Ross. Was that the kid they made a movie about recently?
I think they did make a movie about Freeway Ricky Ross, who was a coke dealer in L.A. I think they did. He kind of he got into hanging out with the rappers after he got out of prison, and was kind of a little minor celebrity in L.A. now. But yeah, he was. I remember all the major narcotics crews were chasing him, and he had a connection with the Colombians, and he was selling cocaine. Not only here, but shipping it to other cities. He was a big time dealer.
Damn.
So,
yeah, he's a true trafficker. Then, yeah.
Shout out to the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yes,
it's like showing a picture. It's like showing a shot of the Eiffel Tower. It tells you, okay, we're in Paris. You show a car point of view driving across the Brooklyn Bridge. You go, okay, we're going into New York.
You used to just also be able to just show the Twin Towers, but you can't do that anymore.
Yes.
If you guys ever, this is Slasher Fred, if you guys ever listen to audio commentary to the original Child's Play, it is mentioned that the scene where Chucky attacks Mike Norris in the car, you get the speeding car was inspired by this film. Absolutely. Huh. I remember that. And I have listened to that commentary. Again, from Slasher Fred, speaking of The Exorcist in the director's cut, you also cut the scene where Reagan is at the dinner party. Yep, I brought that up earlier. When I read your comment, and they should have cut those scenes, and I was glad they did. When they put up that extras thing, I was the special cut or whatever they called it. It wasn't a director's cut; it was final cut or special cut, and I didn't like it. Still haven't seen this movie. I saw Clifton Duncan giving Gene Hackman a chat and shout out on X today. No, fantastic. You should watch this film. It's a must see. Yes, there it is, the Robbie Coltrane comment. And one of my favorite tough guy cop movies is the movie Dick Tracy. They took all the elements from the comic book series and put it into the movie. It's a fun film, but it's not realistic at all, but it's a fun film. Frank Sinatra as Dirty Harry could have been fun if he just could have not been so limp-wristed and hold up that damn weapon after he broke his wrist. But I'm kind of glad because I think Clint Eastwood owned that.
Clint Eastwood, he made it his role.
Yeah,
I did all 5 of them on my platform.
It's hard to imagine anyone else playing Dirty Harry now.
Oh yeah, I know. Over 50 years later, and still arguably one of the best chase movies. Yeah, I agree.
The person I feel bad about in Dirty Harry is Andrew Robinson because he did such a good job. People couldn't see him as anything but.
Oh, he got typecast. It hurt his career.
Yeah. He was Scorpio in the movie, right? He was the bad guy. Yeah. The last Dirty Harry movie that I reviewed was the Deadpool, right? We went through, my guest and I ranked the best bad guys for Dirty Harry, and Scorpio, by far, the first one was the best. So,
which of course is based on Zodiac.
Yeah.
Right.
Very much inspired by it. A lot of people don't know John Milius stepped in to help script doctor the screenplay. It was one of his first early jobs. And by the way, if I've never told you, Patrick, John Milius is a god to me. I fucking love John Milius. He writes men being men. And that's why his Conan film is gonna be forever the best Conan film that'll ever have been made.
Yep. Yeah. And I got to say, having been taken into New York by my parents, because I lived in New Jersey, this does remind me of New York in the 70s. This isn't just the seedier neighborhoods because the cops are there looking for drug dealers. You needed a great deal of money to live nicely in New York City. There were a lot of bad neighborhoods, run down, and so on.
Yeah,
so we kind of do.
When you talk Apache, the Bronx, this movie, the Warriors. In the 60s and 70s, New York was on its knees. They weren't providing basic services. They were down on cops. Remember, it almost went broke under Mayor Lindsay, right? And so a lot of the degrading societal stuff that you see in those movies was actually real life, right? Heroin was out of control. So it was on its knees. It wasn't until Giuliani. I mean, they started coming out of it a little bit before Giuliani, and then Giuliani put it on steroids, where they cleaned up the city. But it was a very gritty, dangerous city. If you look at, remember, like the movie Midnight Cowboy, right?
Oh yeah.
And then Taxi Driver, Times Square, and what it was like. It was a seedy mess, and then they completely.
West 42nd Street from Times Square to the Port Authority bus terminal. Ugh, that was a gauntlet just to walk down there. But yeah, it was, well, Mayor Dinkins was the one who started it, but he wasn't successful in other respects. And then Giuliani came in and really put the screws on with the broken windows policing, and it started to make a really big difference. But the major crimes were starting to drop under Dinkins. But that's, that was the bad old days in New York. It was, you watched yourself. You kept your, you distributed your money and credit cards and everything around you. And my friends in high school said, if you go to New York, you got to look poor and straight. Because if you look poor, nobody will try and mug you. And if you look straight, nobody will try and sell you anything.
Yeah, I've done several of these New York cop movies, and when you talk to the guys, when you get the NYPD guys on, in fact, I'm interviewing a couple of NYPD guys this week on my other show, but they talk about how bad it was, and there was an attitude before Giuliani where it was don't sweat the small stuff. They only did the big arrests. In fact, if you watch the movie Serpico, you see where Serpico ends up making this arrest where the cops shoot at Serpico, which is undercover, right? And then they want the big collar, and there was always this big deal about a collar. It's like, it's New York. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. You can make a collar every day, but making a collar in New York meant several hours of booking and that stuff, and you only wanted a good one to waste your time, because the attitude was don't waste your time on the small stuff, the big stuff. So part of that change, meaning NYPD needed to change and how they did the work. It was really surprising, because when I did law enforcement in the 80s, we were always hook and book, take him to jail. LA was always that way. NYPD wasn't. That was an attitude change they had to go through.
There's a bit of trivia that I learned while researching this film recently. When they toss a straw hat on the back parcel shelf of the car and leave it in the rear window, that was apparently a universal signal to New York City cops that the car had undercover officers operating in, so that the cops wouldn't roust them or give them a ticket or do something, get the car towed. They'd leave them alone. So that was their signal. That was their, hey guys, which I thought was interesting, because it makes no sense if you don't know that, when he grabs the hat from Popeye and then he chucks it in the back of the car. It's like, why do you do that? I thought he gave it to him to wear. No, he gave it to him to put the signal out. We're on duty.
You brought up Serpico again, and I want to point out that is one of F. Murray Abraham's early films. He's one of the cops that sets him up to be shot.
Yeah,
standing outside the door. And that, by the way, that movie, I saw that movie when I was 9 years old in the theater with my dad. And my dad kept covering my eyes or my ears, and he couldn't make up his mind which one he wanted to do. So, but it didn't matter, because I could hear and still see everything.
Yes.
What was it? The swearing he didn't want, or was
the swearing? There was I think there was a bit of nudity or violence. He didn't want me seeing that, and it's just like, well, and people are like, why did he take it? I said, because my dad was one of those people who had illegally kidnapped me and took me from Arizona to Virginia to hide out with me. So there was no babysitter. If he was going to go see a movie, he had to take me. And that's why I got to see so many awesome films as a kid, because I was raised by a guy who couldn't leave me with a babysitter. And Serpico, man, that movie when he gets shot in the cheek, dude, for years I was trying to figure out how did they do that? How did they do that? Because I love special, practical effects for makeup and shit like that.
Yeah, a friend of mine got shot in the face, half his face shot off. He survived, but yeah.
Somebody just joined us.
Yes, deleted scene 12
Oh.
hours.
Now, so
Here we
had a
go.
little hard issue, but I'm back now.
This is, that's the real Grasso there playing the Fed, talking to another guy, not paying attention to the Frenchman just walked outside. So now he has to follow him. This leads to his pursuit of him in the subway.
Yeah, the feds don't come off well in this movie.
No.
It's told from the point of view of the NYPD. They didn't like the feds. None of my cousins who were police officers liked having to involve federal agents in a case. They hated it.
Well, it's I have had a few federal folks on my show, and they get angry because like the federal marshals, if they're doing it, I had them on a few of my shows, and they said, yeah, the FBI, when they show up, they expect to be in charge of the press conference. They expect to be the lead, and it upsets everybody else, right? And
they become secondary citizens.
Yes, and they may have done most of the work on it, and then the FBI steps in, and it has to be front and center. Well, the FBI is going to talk, and they want a speaking point at the press conference. I've done several press conferences, and I actually worked closely with them on anti-terrorism stuff, and they liked me because I could take charge and get things done, but they could sit in the back and just step up and be co-chairs and not have to do as much work as me. But it was okay because they provided resources, which is why I did what I needed. They gave me the money I needed to get it done. So if I had to be a little bit of a lackey for them, I was okay with that, because at the time I was pulling in about $70 million worth of grants from the feds, and if they advocated for you, that just helped grease the skids. So I guess I acquiesced because they had money. So
they always have money.
Yes,
that's even brought up in this film. The feds always got money.
They got money, and that's why they're able to nose their way into good investigations. So,
and they would also, a lot of people don't know this, that they had CODIS. They were the ones who were in charge of all the fingerprints, and so law enforcement, in order to find out if this guy's wanted anywhere else, they'd have to go through the FBI for that.
Yeah,
and
a lot of the major agencies, like we have our own crime lab, a lot of and we co-locate with LAPD. There's a lot of states that have their own crime labs, and so they might have their own databases for fingerprints as well. So because I used to do used to have to, when I was a young deputy, you did 4 cards, right? One went to the FBI, one went local, and they went to different places. And so you had your own collection, but we were big enough that, the way to say it is LA County Sheriff's are the largest in the country, so we were resource rich in comparison to a lot of other jurisdictions. So we could do our own thing, right? And then we could do it with LAPD, although they were sometimes hard to work with. But what happened with CODIS is they digitalized it, and now you can check all the databases across the country.
Yeah,
not just your own local.
When I did my research, Patrick, every department had their guy in charge of doing the research.
Yeah.
And this is for control issues, because they didn't want every cop having access to it. You had one guy who was in charge of that terminal.
And I can't remember when CODIS came online, where it was that during my tenure or just before. I mean, I started in '83, so, but I can remember doing the card one, 4 different cards, and they go to different places. So,
and many states, by the way, have their state version of the FBI. Like I remember Georgia had the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and they had that state's version of CODIS too.
Yeah,
where they had their records for that state alone. And since 9/11, we've seen more cooperation between states now.
The feds might have a different criteria for entry into their CODIS, right? They may accept, may not accept, and states might have different fingerprint databases, let's say for civil service employees, so not necessarily for crimes that can be accessed. So that you have this need to have so local capacity, and you wouldn't want the feds to have all that stuff because it's unnecessary, right? But and it would be a violation of, if you're signing up to be a state employee and you get fingerprinted, you're not signing up for your fingerprints to go to the feds, right? There would need to be some kind of warrant, I guess, to get that information. But so that's why the state might have different local databases.
And does California have its own bureau?
They used to have the Bureau of Investigations and Narcotics and all that stuff, but they merged everything with the CHP. So now the CHP pretty much does everything
For
statewide.
California. Gotcha.
For California. I mean, they're starting to do their own homicide investigations on state property and state highways, which that only started a few years ago. The locals used to do all the homicides that occurred on and all the criminal investigations occurred on the freeways. Now they're starting to do it. I personally think they're just growing their empire. Because I think the governor just wants to control as much policing as he can. And so they're taking over as much jurisdiction as kind of the federal goal to take over all policing on a state level. That's why I kind of see it in California, and it's just kind of a slow creep. It's just something I noticed. But I'll tell this story about in this movie. So they seized the heroin. I think I told you before we started, but there's another movie that if you like this movie, watch it, and it's called Prince of the City with Treat Williams. And in this movie, we seize the heroin, and Rosso and Egan are basically they're special investigation is what they are, right? You can see that they kind of go and do whatever they want, do whatever investigations they want. And you see in Prince of the City, it's the same thing. It's a special investigation units, and they're taking down big dealers, they're taking down big scores, and also they're stealing, right? Well, the heroin seized in this case was put in an evidence locker, and people that were part of those crews began stealing it and selling it on the street, right? The coppers. The feds found out about it, and they were pissed. And that is the premise for what happens in Prince of the City, where the feds come down on NYPD and these guys in these special investigation units. So I didn't realize when I watched Prince of the City, I don't know, 30 years ago, that it was a true story. But it's based upon a true story in which people were stealing the heroin seized in the French Connection that just upset the feds. And so they came down. And that, I don't think that was the Mullen. I can't remember which. Maybe it was the Mullins Commission, but it inspired a commission in New York to weed out corruption. But it's a good movie to watch as a follow up on this one, because there's the connection between the dope and the dope being stolen by cops. So here we got the cops seizing it, and then a few years later you got cops stealing it,
which is crazy. But the other one, which we talked about too, is the film The 7-Ups, which is directly connected because, again, that film is based on not Eddie Egan this time, but Grasso, who is his partner, and another criminal investigation he was involved with. But I do want to point out that there is a really good actor in this playing a mobster in here, which is funny because he was in Serpico. He played a cop in that. He was in the French Connection playing a gangster. But as I recall, he was also on Police Story. Yes. The actor is, of course, Tony Lobianca, who plays the main gangster in this.
Right.
And he was in, I think, the first episode, wasn't it? In Police Story?
Yeah, I don't remember. I know that the New York copper that I had reviewing this movie with me on my show actually met this guy and talked to him. Said he's a nice guy.
He did. No, it was the second episode of the series, season 1, episode 2, Requiem for an Informer, and he played Tony Calabrese, and he played the same character. As I recall, pretty much throughout the series, they would revisit his character. Yep. Oh, later in season 3, he plays a different character, but through season 1 and season 2, he's in 5 episodes playing the same cop. And that was kind of fun because it was more an anthological series, but a lot of the cops were based on real people, so they would have the cop come back and play that character again, or the actor play that character again later. I thought that was neat. But 7-Ups, in that one, they gave Roy Scheider's character's name Vito. And, oh no, he played Buddy. That's
Buddy,
based on Grosso.
Grosso.
But
Vito
Tony
was
LaBianca is in that film too. He's in this movie and in that.
He played Vito, or he played the.
He played Vito.
Yeah, and Vito was. I think he was a funeral home owner, and knew something about the gangsters, and he was selling out information to gangsters, and guys were kidnapping the gangsters, playing a very dangerous game there in 7-Ups.
And by the way, Bill Hickman is in that one too because he was the stunt driver.
And I remember going slightly off topic. I remember this 3-episode arc that Tony LaBianca did on Homicide: Life on the Street, where he plays Ned Beatty's. He plays Ned Beatty's ex-partner who comes back into the fold after he and some of the other detectives got shot. Interesting. I think that was like a 3-part arc. Pretty interesting.
That was a good show, though. I like that show.
Very good. Yeah.
Keely Chow is here. Greetings, Keely. See if I missed anybody dropping in. We got Jamie G is here. Voltaic Blood. Let's see. Eat Clay Thomason is here. And I'm caught up with everybody else. Oh, Awesome One. I didn't see that one. Awesome One is here. Mephisto Raid. Oh, no. You can tell we jumped by 10 watching right now.
So this is where, is this the chasing where it started? He's chasing, so yeah, isn't it?
This is where it begins.
Yeah.
And the chasing, a lot of people don't realize he's not chasing somebody in a car. Yeah. He's following the fucking above ground train. This is a subway where it goes out over the city. And he's looking up and trying to follow this thing and high speeding. And they cut out his voice. So you just hear the sound of the traffic when he's getting angry, banging his hand against the steering wheel, yelling. And I kind of like that you're seeing it rather than hearing it.
When I saw this scene, and it just reminded me of something because when somebody tries to kill you, it gets a little personal, right? And so it's ironic that the situation I was involved a French crook who was stealing high-end, BMWs, Mercedes, that kind of thing, and so this guy tried to kill me, right? And I had a trainee with me. I was uniform, and we took a report of a stolen Mercedes convertible. And
did he shoot at you or try to hit you with his vehicle?
Oh, he tried to run me over, and so we put it in. We entered it in the system. We had to go to the station, and I had the Sunset Strip, the famed Sunset Strip, right? And it was a Saturday night, so it was crowded. And we make a right turn, and we're going to the Beverly Sunset. We're going by the Beverly Sunset, which is this motel that was prostitutes and heroin and cocaine. It was just it was a bad place. And I go, hey, there's the Mercedes, right? And I see it. And he's coming out, and he's got a little French guy with he's got a prostitute in the car, and I cut across the street. There was an opening, and I got right in front of the guy, or partially. I was a little offset, and I get out of the car. Unfortunately, I'm not in a good spot. I was driving, and I was right in front of his car. All he has to do is turn a little bit, and he can miss my car. And I got my gun out and tell him to put his hands up, and I could just see him say something to the girl. And they both ducked their heads and hit the gas pedal. And I had two options. I either shoot and get hit or jump out of the way and survive. I chose to jump out of the way. But I had enough follow-up on it because I found his room. And like Popeye Doyle, I was a little different here. It took me about 16 hours to find that guy. But I kept working until I found him. And when I found him, the detective showed up and says, no, you're going home. We'll take it from here. And I found him at a motel. I think I found some paperwork, and I got a bill for a motel. And in the alley behind the motel, there was these 10 high-end cars that he had stolen. I don't know if he was going on to the port with them, what he was going to do with them. And he was French. He was a French national. He coming over doing this thing. Probably going to send him to France or Europe, whatever. So it does have a connection with the French connection, because that guy was French. He tried to kill me, and the guy that was tried to kill Popeye Doyle here was French, and we both got a little pissed off that people tried to kill us, right? So
you take it a little personal.
You take it a little personal, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
and this is a great chase scene. Oh, somebody just popped in. It is our dear friend Tom. What's up, Tom?
Your feet in Poughkeepsie?
Yeah. Patrick, this is Tom from Midnight's Edge.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
You were on the end of the bed. You were picking your feet in Poughkeepsie, weren't you?
Poughkeepsie.
It's like whoever has brought up Poughkeepsie in a film before, I don't think anybody's ever even made a movie there.
That's why I was confused. I was like, is this a colloquialism I'm missing out on? Or
yes, what the fuck does Poughkeepsie mean?
I've said it because to me it's the funniest city name in all of New York State.
I think
where's it at?
At the time the movie,
it's
upstate, right? Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think at the time the movie was made, if I'm not mistaken, there had been a string of assaults in Poughkeepsie. So like it was like Popeye kept asking that as like a question because it came from something he used to ask everybody or something he used to ask everybody for real, the real Popeye Doyle.
You know, you've been in Poughkeepsie.
70s Sunset Strip. Yeah.
You ever been to Poughkeepsie?
Now, I do want to point out again, I brought this up earlier, the film takes place in the 70s, but in reality, the actual incident took place in 1962. So you would have had a mishmash of 60s cars and 50s cars instead of what you got here, which is a mixture of 70s cars and a few 60s cars. But again, I would do it that same way because saves you so much on budget when you're doing a instead of a period piece, a modern piece.
I forgot. I pulled up the original car that they actually used. It wasn't a Caddy, but I can't think of what. Or it wasn't a Lincoln, but I can't think of what it was now. But
it all still worked in the 1970s. It's not like there was a particular detail that was really important.
Yeah, it's a 10-year difference. Policing was still the same at that point. Mephisto, thank you so much for the all the additional watchers. It's much appreciated, my friend.
Oh, Bush is here. Do you have his video?
Bush.
Do I have Bush's video? Oh, I don't know. It's somewhere around here. I'll probably have to go into one of the other shows.
So on these chase scenes, when you end up in a chase by yourself, because I started before we had handheld radios. So you could end up in a chase where you're chasing somebody, and at the time I was running sub-6s, and I could do that for forever, right? So I lost a few partners as I chased guys, and you begin to realize, I got no help. I'm all by myself.
Don't go too fast. This video is for you, Bush. There you go. So let's see. Looks like you got the Friedkin interview and the Hackman Oscars, but you'll probably have to play the Gene Hackman interview by itself.
Yep.
And the reason I didn't just give the video to you to share, they have soundtrack music throughout that whole thing, and I had to try to find a way using noise gate to muffle out that fucking music while Gene's talking. And he did that interview sometime in the 2000s, as I recall. Like, I think close to 2010. He was really starting to show his age. This delay tactic they use here for picking up the car is great because they got to put the car back together again after prying it apart.
Didn't they just get a different car? I don't think.
I can't remember. I just watched it, but I don't recall. Anima, did they use a different car, or did they put the car back together again?
Because they put the car back together.
Oh, did they really?
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they used the same car. They just put everything back and made it look like nobody has ever ripped it apart.
Yeah, that was the NYPD garage body shop.
Yeah,
they actually know what they're doing. So
Yeah,
once the cars are taken apart under supervision, They put it
They
back
didn't
together.
take it fully apart. They just they did it until they found some heroin. They knew
Well,
it's all there.
it was in the door well, is where they find it.
That's what
Yeah,
it
the sill.
began to find it, and that was enough for them because they had all the additional weight, so they knew no matter where it is in that car. They just needed confirmation, so they didn't have to fully rip everything apart. I don't think they did that. They just needed
And
to find
I'm
it.
going to put money on it that I believe this film helped make pork pie hats popular.
What?
That's what they're called, pork pie hats.
Okay. I forgot. I just watched it. I forgot.
Didn't Paulie wear one in Rocky? I think that's
Yes,
Paulie
I
wore
think he
one.
did.
That's right. But when you said Paulie, I'm thinking Paulie, our Paulie, because he wears one too.
Like everybody else from our community.
The
Paulie
Latino
is Paulie.
slant.
Yeah. That's Paulie. The one
Yes,
and
but
only.
Paulie can pull that hat off.
Yes, he can.
He can pull everything
And that
off.
mustache.
Oh yeah.
He's like, oh my God, Tom Selleck, dude. Like unbelievably thick mustache.
Paulie's
Fucking
one of the
Latinos.
people you can dress him in a garbage bag and he's going to pull it off. I don't know how they do it, but yeah.
We
he
can
has
put that to a
mindset.
test, Tom. Let's get Paulie to wear a trash bag, see if it looks good on him.
I'm sure it would.
By the way, I do want to go over these because Tim sent some messages. Let me get to him here. Slasher Fred, yes, there was. Frank was also going to be in Die Hard. Actually, he had first right of refusal for Die Hard.
And he did? He refused?
Yes, he did, because that's based on the same character he played in the Detective.
Oh.
Yes, see Marooned with Gene Hackman. Great film. I like that film. Let's see, Tim. Gary, idea for Military Monday, Slaughterhouse 5. Somebody make a note of that, Anima Martin.
Yep. On it.
He asked that you actually put that in the comments, not in the chat, Tim. Since Kurt Vonnegut was at Dresden, yes, he served in the U.S. military.
You catch 22, right?
Yeah.
Hello.
What? Why'd you say that?
Testing if my oh, because my mic is
You know,
fading.
sometimes he
I don't
mutes
think-
without noticing.
I don't think it was Catch 22, but I think it was, what was it, Welcome to the Monkey House, or one of
I think that
Okay.
was his. Yeah.
yeah, that's Vonnegut.
Yeah, Catch 22 was Heller, I think.
Joseph Heller.
Yeah,
Heller,
Joseph
thank you.
Heller. Good writer too. I like Joseph Heller. Although I prefer the original film Catch 22 than the miniseries, which I just did not like. Why? Because there were actual veterans in the original film, whereas just a bunch of Hollywood actors in the updated series. Guys playing soldier. Yeah, he did Mother Night. I remember that one. Slaughterhouse 5.
That's it.
And I'm looking, I don't see it. I don't remember any of these other ones. So it's not Monkey House.
No, I think
Unless he
I think
wrote
it
that
was
as straight as a
Slaughterhouse 5.
screenplay. Yeah, Slaughterhouse 5 is something else. And they gave that an X rating because of some of the nudity with Valerie Perrine in it, and sexual situations. But Tom, you joined. Did you have something you wanted to add to the conversation?
I just love this movie. Friedkin's one of my favorite directors, more so just because of his attitude and who he is than some of the films he's done. But I mean, between The Exorcist and this alone, I mean,
he makes fun of other directors. I love it when he goes shits on another director, and just I love his brutal honesty.
Gary, you have an echo.
that was my fault.
It's not
Sorry,
me.
Oh.
It was
I
Tom.
fixed it. But yeah, no, I love when he goes off on stuff. Yeah. Especially like one of my more recent ones I loved was when he was asked about DVD because some idiot was like, "Well, what do you think about DVD? And don't you think you should update your films over a certain amount of years?" And I've heard DVD only lasts like 10 years or whatever. And he's like,
only last, like,
"Who
10
the
years?
fuck said that?"
I know, right?
And he's like, Oliver Stone. Well, or was it Oliver Stone or no?
He said, "Fuck Oliver Stone." He was Oliver Stone.
Was Oliver Stone? Yeah, because he's like, well, fuck Oliver Stone.
Fuck that
I got
guy.
DVDs that are 20 years old and they still play.
Yeah.
Yep.
A really great one with Freakin' is when he's talking to the guy that directed Only God Forgives, and he's like, "Oh, I believe this will be classic." Like, how do you fucking even know that? This just came out. You know, Exorcist is a classic. It's been 50 years. Will anyone even be talking about your fucking movie? You don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Right. He calls them out on their bullshit, and I love that. They're fucking. They think they're saying something intellectual, and they're just throwing around hyperbole, and that's it. And saying absolute statements about something that's new. It's like, fuck off. Let's talk about it in 20, 30 years and see if it's still.
Well, and I think it was somebody was misinterpreting what Oliver was saying and then asked him a stupid question. So Freakin' is not one who has time for stupid fucking questions. Like, you ask him a stupid question, he's going to give you a harsh answer.
Yeah, it's sort of like when I had to pick up Bruce Campbell from the airport, and this kid was coming along to be videographer and capture everything, and I was picking up my buddy Josh Becker too, and so he says, you got any advice for me? I said, yeah, don't ask stupid questions. I want you to stop and think before you say something, and think, would this be classified as a stupid question? And then ponder it. And if you're not sure, ask me before asking him. But then he didn't, and he asked a stupid question on the drive back to the film festival, and he asked him about the cut scene that he was in from The Quick and the Dead, and Bruce just cut him off at the knees. He goes, "There's no such scene. That's bullshit."
And I mean, this movie also kind of made Gene Hackman a star.
Yeah.
It did, because before this, he was a bit actor. He was playing side characters.
Well, and he almost was Mr. Brady.
Yeah, I know. Crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this changed his life because he got an Oscar.
And this is kind of one of the first movies where you see like a Dirty Harry type.
Fun
I'm
fact.
trying to remember if this predated Dirty Harry or not. I'm trying to remember.
They came out the same year. I double
Was
checked.
it? I was going to say they were pretty close. I knew that.
It was October of 71 for this, if I remember right, and December.
Okay.
So 2 months later, Dirty Harry. So you got.
So yeah, there was no real copycat going on or anything like that. It just so happened that, you get two movies that are loosely kind of similar in tone as far as their leads come out at the same time. And yeah, it's of that era. Both of those films caught the wave of the era, the feeling of the time, especially of some of the more conservative audience in a way.
Right.
Yeah, the frustration with increasing crime. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, John Milius was one of the script doctors for Dirty Harry.
Mm-hmm.
One of his early jobs.
Didn't he just flat out write it? I thought he did. I know he flat out wrote the second one for sure.
Yeah. I think he was just, I don't think he's even credited on.
I don't remember, but I know because he's got a great interview where it's actually more poignant now than it even probably was then when they were doing the.
Yeah. Here it is.
DVD
I just
extra,
looked it up, Tom.
But yeah.
He's
talking about
uncredited.
Yeah, okay. Where he's talking about just the difference between the first movie compared to the second movie, because the first movie he said was the conservative point of view, and then he said the second one was more of the left point of view at the time, and kind of how he was kind of tying both, giving both voices the same kind of equal footing.
Because the writer,
it's funny though, because the left still ate the movie up. It didn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Well, the critics hated the first one because they didn't want the message going out.
Yeah, they called it a right-wing wet dream. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It's odd too that there even are sequels, because original Dirty Harry, it's obvious that he's quitting the force. That's what that entire thing with him throwing the badge at the end is. So it's just hilarious that he's just back on the force, like nothing happened in the second one.
Yeah.
Now this one surprises me, Tom. The writing credited for Dirty Harry is Harry Julian Fink, Rita M. Fink, and Dean Reisner. Story by Harry Julian Fink and Rita M. Fink. And then additional uncredited is Joe Himes, Terrence Malick, dude, and John Milius. I tend to not like Terrence Malick's writing, so I'm a little surprised on that one. But Malick and John Milius both are uncredited for having written the screenplay or written on the screenplay. Now this is it. So you're saying that's real heroin. So I'm curious what that chemical is that they drip into it.
That's like Mythbusters not telling you what the proportion is of iron oxide and aluminum when you're making.
Because I tried to look it up and I can't find it anywhere. What chemical they used, or what it represented, because it turns blood red, bright blood red, and he says that's almost pure. This is, again, that 89% pure. And it's funny it's like 500,000. It's like that. Now let's say that in today's dollars, that's like $3.8 million worth of junk.
And I think they were getting it from Southeast Asia, right? So that was come from that versus Mexican brown. So
wherever it makes a stop, it gets cut with something. So that's why they're so used to having a lesser percentage. So getting like 89% is crazy.
Yep, because they can cut it twice and then sell it. Yeah, this movie, for all of the effort, and boy, are you rooting for Popeye and Cloudy at the end, and this whole thing is coming apart as they finally move in to do the raid and bust them.
Now, who doesn't love that moment though when he's parked at the end of that ramp, blocking him, and he does the wave back at him? He could flick that at him, and I laugh so hard every time he does that. I find it so funny. It's like he's returning the wave to the Frenchman.
Yes. Well, that's the whole cat and mouse thing. I mean, by this time, these guys know everything but each other's phone number.
Yeah.
Probably even that.
Now, we will not cover the second film because I don't consider it. It's like The Exorcist 2. It's not really an authorized sequel. And it's like Friedkin wanted nothing to do with that film. And it is really bad. It's not.
It's all well. I was gonna say it's all right. It's not horrible, but it's missing Roy Scheider. It's missing the same flavor, but
yeah. I mean, I didn't know until the last several days that there had been sequels to The French Connection. As far as I was concerned.
Oh, and there's a TV show too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and Eddie Egan was directly involved with that one too. He died in like 95. By the way, he died young. While Grosso, his partner, lived to 2020.
Yeah, Ed O'Neill actually played him on the TV show.
Yes, he did. That was before he played Al Bundy.
Of course.
And I thought he was really good in that part, by the way.
Honestly, what's funny is in real life, the real Popeye Doyle is more like Brian Dennehy. Like, I can't believe they didn't.
Yeah, he's a short, stocky Irishman.
Yeah, he is. He's very much Eddie like Egan. A Brian Dennehy type. Yeah.
And of course, when they asked him who he wanted to play him, he was looking at somebody like Rock Hudson or really tall, good-looking guys. And he was the one that was actually unsure of Gene Hackman at first.
Gene Hackman's great though, but that's just because Gene Hackman's one of the greatest actors of all time. I mean, period. Yep. But like, he doesn't even have to try that hard.
I was saying earlier, Tom, Hackman didn't want to do this, tried to get out of his contract. And when he realized he wasn't going to get out of the contract, he turned in one of his best performances.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was because Friedkin wouldn't let him. He says, no, you're perfect for this role. This is going to be your best performance ever. I'm telling you.
He didn't like how rough and gruff the character was.
He called him a racist. Like
some of the language. He didn't think he was a racist.
He called Egan. a racist to Friedkin.
I was gonna say, did they never even ever meet besides when they were in the movie together? Because I was gonna
say
they
did, and it's in fact the scene where Egan walked in there because
that's what I was gonna say. I don't think they had met before that. Yeah,
it's like, how am I going to do this scene? I got to get these guys in this bar to go up against this wall. Egan walked up and walked in and says, "Everybody against the wall. You know who I am. Who am I? You're Popeye." And he went in there and owned that scene and walked over and he goes, "That's how you do it." And Hackman went in there and emulated it. And from that day forward, they started becoming friendly with each other.
Yeah, the thing about it is when you're doing police work, it's you're switching from one role to another. This is the way I always, it isn't my nature to, all right, everybody get against the wall, hands on top of your head, and but you take a command presence because that's part of the job, and you slip into that role. When you have to be compassionate, you slip into the compassion role. When you need to talk to a victim you slip into that role. That's part of the job. And when you got to control a room full of people, you got to control a room full of people, and it just tells you that. I mean, Hackman put him through a police academy. I'm sure he'd be able to do it because you understand the dynamics, the human dynamics, and why you have to be that way, right? And so it doesn't surprise me that Eddie Egan did that way. That's. I mean, you don't go to a party and say, "All right, everybody against the wall." That ain't you, man. You're having a good time, right? It's just a different role you're slipping into.
I think from that whole thing was like I was getting to because like what Gary was saying is like after the fact they met on the set and then like a lot of people said the same thing about him. It wasn't so much that he was a racist; it's just that he hated everybody.
Yeah.
And not only that, you got to remember the time that he was a cop. Yeah, and you got to remember the time that he was a cop too. It was at the height of the civil rights movement. There was a lot of crap going on. I mean, people think like this is what I always scuff about when we have this modern day stuff about how like, it's like it's always one sided and this, that, and the other. It's like, where have you been the last 30 years? Like the bleeding heart liberals have been doing nothing but trying to make it easier and easier for the criminals to get out of jail and harder and harder for the cops to put them in jail. Like, what the hell? What world are you living in?
If you think about it, there's a direct line from Popeye Doyle's, appearance in the bar where he makes the quote milkshake to Eddie Murphy's first film, 48 Hours. Where he walks
I figured that's where you're going.
He says to Nick Nolte, all I need is your badge. And he walks in and he owns the room with a badge, no gun, and a suit. That's it. And it does the same thing. Does the whole routine on these white guys, these redneck, he calls them rednecks and worse. And he intimidates the hell out of a bar full of guys, 3/4 of whom are bigger than he is.
Right.
And what is he proving with that, though? That the badge is everything.
The badge is everything, and the attitude is everything.
Yep.
You walk in, you go,
presentation.
Look at Tyne Daly in the Dirty Harry movie she did, where she's left in the bar while Harry goes in the back. And she's about ready to get jumped by the time Harry comes out and takes her out of there by the collar. So she had the badge, but she didn't have the attitude in that.
So, not like Hooks in the Police Academy series. She'd yell all of a sudden.
Some of these squishy actors. So here's Eddie Egan, right? Raised by a grandmother after being orphaned at 12, joined the U.S. Marine Corps in 1947, got called back to active duty for the Korean War. So he's not this is a guy that's had a rough life, and versus somebody who's not been through that kind of stuff. That's why I kind of this generation of actors after these World War II and Korean War veterans who are our stars are just different. They look at the world differently, I think, than the previous generation, right? I don't want to do this part. It might make me look bad. Like I said, Charles Bronson would have a problem doing this movie, and different era.
Right. By the way, with this whole ending thing, my interpretation of it, he does find him, kills him. He just makes sure the body is never found because he knows he's gonna.
No, he did get caught. The Frenchman got caught overseas. He escaped. The movie ended differently because he didn't I looked it up and I can't find anything anywhere of him shooting a Fed.
No, it didn't happen. No.
So
the actor that was the front guy, he got arrested and I think he ended up doing 4 years in prison. The French guy got away and that got picked up by the French police and he was in prison there, but France did not extradite its own citizens. so they did not extradite him to the United States.
And because the guy in real life was Corsican, he was a French national. So
French national, yes.
Yeah, the story I heard was that the real Jimmy Doyle hated the FBI agent so much he was perfectly fine with having Hackman's character shoot him, which didn't happen. But he was like, "Go ahead and shoot him. That works." And apparently, the FBI agent in question was very, very pissed when he found out how he'd been treated in this film. And that he got shot by Popeye, and he was like, "That son of a bitch." I suspect his first response was, "That son of a bitch told him to do it." I bet.
A little bit of payback for the federal overreach, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we show that one, there's a 2-minute and 20-second interview with Friedkin that I wanted to show. So here's this one with Friedkin, the director of the film.
French Connection. That might be one of the finest films ever made. And
you're too kind.
No,
let me give you that $20.
And I'll give it back. But Gene Hackman in that, was Gene comfortable? Because here's why. If it's in the early 70s when that was made, Adam 12 was on TV, so people's understanding of what cops were like in terms of the Hollywood version. In the real world, in some of the poorer communities, they had a very real relationship with the police officers. Mm-hmm. So when French Connection comes out, it's a very mind-blowing moment for a lot of people to see that opening scene with how Gene Hackman behaves, and it's a very different thing. Was he easy to work with in that role?
No. Gene did not really want to go to the dark side of that cop, because Gene is very liberal. He didn't really take well to using the N-word and beating up suspects and all that, which was the truth about that cop. And Gene didn't want to go there. So he and I had a constant tug of war where I had to get him angry. And he's angry throughout that picture.
Do you physically attack people you work with?
There have been occasions.
Yeah, you slapped people before, haven't you?
Yeah, well, a priest in The Exorcist. He was not an actor. He was a priest. And it was 4 o'clock in the morning, and we were freezing. And he had to give the last rites to his friend who had just plunged from the top of a flight of steps. And the crew was there and freezing, and we did about 25, 30 takes, and he wasn't getting it. And he couldn't reach the emotional point. And I had read that other great directors had done that. John Ford, George Stevens had done that.
Whack.
Yeah. And I first I took him by the shoulders, and I asked him if he loved me and if he trusted me. And he said, "You know I do, Bill." I said, "Okay." And I told the cameras to get ready, and I hit him as hard as I could across the face. And I said, "Roll it." And he went right into the scene. The shock of it, the shock brought forth the tears, and afterwards he embraced me and thanked me.
You can't pull that card too often, though, can you?
No, I haven't done it more than 570 times.
But not more of that.
And the fact is, though, he did some other things that pissed people off.
Well, Friedkin's not the director that any of these modern actors could deal with. No way.
They could not handle that guy.
Nope.
Because he
ain't got no patience for that bullshit.
They'd have to go to their safe space.
He injured Ellen Burstyn in the.
Well, that's probably the worst thing he ever did.
Yeah. Because
but I mean,
they did a pull stunt, and she did her own stunt, and it fractured her back.
Well, 90% of the other stuff he'd done, I probably would have I'd be like, I wish I was a director in that age, just because I understood why. Because he's not going to sit there.
Well, he's talking about John Ford, because John Ford was, when Jack Lemmon got hired for Mr. Roberts, he walked up to him and Ford just talked to him, and then spit in his hand and reached his hand out, and Lemmon was like,
Ew.
And he spit in his hand and he shook hands with him. That's the Irish way. That's a handshake. He goes, and that's our contract. He says, "Do I need a contract?" And he goes, "No, there's our contract." But
that's why the Irish
while making
drink
the film,
so much. They need
Henry Fonda, who was close friends with Ford for years, had worked with him, and would never work with him again after that film because they got into a disagreement and Ford beat the shit out of him. I mean, Henry Fonda threw some punches back at him, and it got him fired. It got Ford fired. And so I can't remember who was brought in, but somebody else was brought in to finish the film because he was not allowed back on the set because of Henry Fonda. And Henry Fonda swore he'd never work with him again because he knocked the shit out of him. Ford was an Irishman, gruff around the edges. What they showed in Spielberg's movie, that was pretty much what he was like. Really rough around the edges. Wayne put up with a lot of shit, and a lot of people don't know this, that their first movie together after World War II, he kept mocking John Wayne for having not served during the film. And I'm not sure who it was. It might have been Lee Marvin. I'm not sure. But somebody went up to him and said, man, you got to stop. It's affecting everybody what you're doing. Calling him a pussy and all that shit and a coward. Called him yellow, too. Called him yellow.
Yeah.
And
Why?
yellow is another term for coward.
Oh.
And so he was really letting into John Wayne. And the co-star of the film said, you got to stop. You're impacting all of us in doing this to him. And so he finally stopped picking on him about it. Never picked on him again. But it was a sense of contention between the two of them until his own death. Because John Wayne looked at him as his second dad, his father. Yellow-bellied. There you go. They showed it in Popeye. Remember that? When Bluto is swimming away, his entire costume is yellow.
Didn't Shane call Jack Palance's character yellow? You're low down, yellow bellied, something.
Yellow bellied. Yeah, he called him that.
Something or other.
And Palance is another one that, war veteran, Korean War, where it said that his look, there's no photos of him when he was young. Publicly, I've never found any. And they say that the reason why is because he never let them be released, so they would know how much his face had been altered after he had crash landed in a fighter plane during the Korean War, because it fucked his face up. So that was his look. And I love Jack Palance, man. Nobody could play. I mean, he was a great villain, dude. But then he turns around and he plays Curly in City Slickers. Fucking nails it.
Oh, well, yeah.
And he's funny. And he's also played Dracula in Bram Stoker's Dracula that was put out in 76 or 77. It was produced and I think directed by the guy who created Dark Shadows. Yes. He loved hissing. He was weird. He was a weird dude. Great actor, though.
Thing though with vampires, they hiss.
No, but he just breathes.
But they usually go. He goes, yeah, he was a heavy breather, dude, all the time.
I think
when he played
that's why.
Carl Grissom in
yes, when he's kissing the ferrets.
You are my number one.
I'm my number one. And he breathes in.
Even Jack Nicholson makes fun of him for it later.
Yeah, and Bob doesn't get it. Bob doesn't understand that the Joker is doing an impression of Carl Grissom. He goes, I won't let you down, boss. Because he says the thing to Bob. Fucking crazy shit, man.
We have Max Demon in the house.
Oh, hey, what's up, Max? Dan, I haven't seen you in a while. John Wayne was I don't know if that's true. I have doubts of that one.
It's supposedly a quote from Miller. So if they had beef.
What Miller? There are a lot of Millers.
Well, could you care to be more specific,
Max Damon, be more specific. I don't know who you're talking about. I do want to show this clip of him accepting the Oscars. This is Gene at the Oscars.
Thank you. I'm pleased and I'm very honored to be here. And you all look swell, and that's the end of my speech. Now, can you flip them over for me? Because I didn't say what I was supposed to. The 5 gentlemen tonight who are nominated for the best performance by an actor have earned that honor by following all the rules that all the great actors of all times have tried to do. And tonight is just another splendid night. They are Mr. Peter Finch in Sunday, Bloody Sunday, a Joseph Janney production, United Artists. Gene Hackman in The French Connection, D'Antoni Productions, 20th Century Fox. Walter Matthau in Koch, a Koch Company production, ABC Pictures, presentation, Cinerama. George C. Scott in The Hospital, a Howard Gottfried, Patty Chayefsky production, in
All great
association
films,
with
by the
Arthur
way.
Hiller, United Artists. Topo in Fiddler on the Roof, a Mirish Cartier production, United Artists. You have the envelope?
You should pause this for a second.
You guys
since
as nervous
Academy's
as I
gonna
am?
nail you anyway.
And the winner is...
Remember when we actually had
They
movies
won't,
that people
let
actually
us pause. That's actually in the stream.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna say, remember when there's people who actually won awards and had movies nominated that we actually saw?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could, Martin, if you could actually pull that up and show it before the
Yes.
other one.
That was my fault. I didn't mean to do that. I didn't know you
and
could
cut
pause.
past her entire speech. I didn't know how
I
long
just know
she
how the
talked.
Academy is.
Why
too,
was she
though,
so
man.
breathless? That's annoying to listen to.
She's
It's a long run up there
on-
to the podium.
Are you
I
kidding
saw
me?
her, I
That's
saw her at a
cocaine.
movie theater about 10 years ago. She was going to watch a movie at
So Tom,
in Southern California. And, that's what
Thank
they
you.
did.
I'm pleased and I'm very honored to be here.
Past this.
And y'all look swell. Great act. Another 20th Century Actions, 20th Association with United Artists.
Thank you. Thank you very
I'm
much.
muting it. Wait till still muted.
That's what it says.
You know, it'd be funny is if they claim us on the applause.
Well, now you got to pause.
You know you have to cut this out.
Oh. Thank you very much. I just want to start at the beginning just for a second and say, sitting out there next to Barbara Harris reminds me of my first acting scene ever was in New York, and the gentleman sitting in front of us when we were doing that scene was my acting teacher, and I just have to mention his name, George Morris, and I want to thank him. Also, Mr. Billy Friedkin, who has already received his prize tonight, but I have to thank him because he really brought me through this when I wanted to quit. And Eddie Egan, who you all know, Mr. Phil D'Antoni, Roy Scheider, Roy, and last, a young lady who I met in New York many years ago, Miss Filippa Maltese, and she brought me uptown. Thank you.
What a great dude. But it still shocks me because this guy is a hardcore Marine, you know, and he was still kind of one of those typical Hollywood guys, you know, not wanting to play this character. And by the way, Koch is a great film. I don't know. Have you seen that one, Chief?
No, I don't think I have. Koch?
I think my least favorite film that was mentioned there was Fiddler on the Roof. So I saw it as a kid. It was great. But then when I became an adult, I was like, I'm not really into those kinds of movies. Didn't like it. But Koch is a great film, as was George C. Scott in Hospital. Oh, my God. What a frenetic performance in that. Have you seen that one, Tom?
Koch?
No, Hospital with George C. Scott.
No.
You need to see that one. It's MASH, but in the civilian world of working in the insanity of a New York hospital. It's crazy. And somebody in that hospital is killing somebody on purpose. Patients are dying. And it is just a great movie. It's a comedy, dark comedy, and in the vein of MASH. And I love that movie. You should see it, Tom. I highly recommend it. This is the interview with Gene Hackman. And this was done in the 2000s or right around 2010, I think.
Film was totally different than anything I'd ever done. I'd never shot that much outside, and especially in the wintertime, and especially in those conditions where we were just at it all the time. At least that's my recollection of it. And I don't think I'd ever been pushed as much by a director either, which was really good for me. I was intrigued that Billy had such a command of what he wanted to do with the film. And Billy's the kind of guy, a perfectionist, that if he doesn't see it, it's not there. And so you just have to keep at it until it becomes there. We were doing a scene with a drug pusher. It might have been the second day. I don't know. It was in the first week. I know that. And Billy wanted me to push him around pretty heavily. I couldn't do it. I did feel like I had never done that kind of action, tough guy role.
No, man, no. Hey, no, Joe the barber? Joe the barber, right? That's who it is, isn't it? Don't give us any shit. What's Joe's last name?
I was looking at 3 or 4 months of this constant kind of beating on people. So I thought, and so I did. I went to him. I said, I don't think I can do it. And to his credit, or maybe because he was in a bind, he decided not to let me go. And I will be eternally grateful that he didn't, because it was certainly the start of my career.
Need a little help there? You dumb guinea. How the hell did I know he had a knife? Never trust a nigger. Could have been white. Never trust anyone.
The character was a bigot and anti-Semitic and whatever
That's
else.
the bit they cut out now.
Call him. That's who he was. It was difficult for me to say the N-word. I protested somewhat, but there was a part of me that also said, that's who the guy is. I mean, you like him or not, that's who he was. You couldn't really whitewash it. Eddie Egan was on the set a great deal, every day, as I recall.
First thing you know, you'll wind up in an entrapment trap, the both of you.
And so I pulled a great deal of
Gary,
what
you were
I
muted.
did from his attitude.
You're still muted. Nobody can hear you.
Sorry. Yeah, I was muted. No, Eddie Egan was also the technical advisor. That's why he was there all the time.
Oh, my ass. At best, he's selling nickel and dime bags.
I mean, he had cop written on his forehead. You saw him on the street and you knew he was a police officer. He was just this big, tough guy. He wanted Rod Taylor for the part that I did.
That was it, Rod Taylor.
He thought he looked like Rod Taylor.
Me? You wasted 2 months on this.
He and I didn't get along great. I appreciated him because, he was the basis of the movie. But we had our differences. He went into a bar one night and he did the scene that's in the film now, where Popeye comes in and yells out, "Popeye's here, get your hands on the bar." Now, he did that.
All right, Popeye's here. Get your hands on your head. Get off the bar and get on the wall.
But he did it for real. I mean, there were real bad dudes in there.
Oh, so that wouldn't actually was real life.
I
Holy
could
crap.
see that was possible.
Move, face the wall. Turn around there.
If a guy was tough enough, strong enough, a real police officer could get away with that. When we went to do that actual scene in the film, I walked into this bar and there was, I'd say 50 of the toughest, rattiest looking people I'd ever seen in my life. I thought, there is just no way in the world I'm ever going to get through this scene alive.
Get that phone. Come on. Move. Move.
We rehearsed it just kind of briefly. And Sonny, I think it was, said, I want you to meet a couple of guys. And he started introducing me to these people, these extras, I thought. And they were all police officers. Everybody in that scene in the bar were police.
That's why they were able to play the part so well.
Yep.
It was a great relief to me.
Get that hair done before Saturday. We're going now. Goodbye.
I was never aware of having to compromise in the picture at all. which is a great credit to Friedkin, because a lot of times non-actors stick out like a sore thumb. But I don't think they did in French Connection. I think people blended pretty well. As an actor, I never adjusted to anybody in terms of how much experience they had. I would do what I felt was the right thing for the scene, and it was up to Billy to see if the other actors, street people or non-actors, would come up to that or be at that level or however you want to describe it. It was a great break for both.
I want to point out that just like with The Exorcist, where he got the help of the Catholic Church on that film, Friedkin turned to the New York City Police Department to help him make this film. And they really did. They got involved. Even though some of those things, like I said, are technically guerrilla films, he had the cops helping him. They didn't have permits. The cops were just helping him make the scenes, the chase scene and shit, scenes on the street. And you heard it there. All those guys in that bar, the black guys in that bar, were off-duty police officers. That's incredible.
Both of us. I don't think Roy had done a lot of work. I always felt very comfortable with him. He was always rock solid, always right there. He was a terrific actor, kind of underrated in a lot of ways. I think the fact that we had gone out with the police for a couple of weeks off and on prior to shooting the film helped us a great deal, because we got to know each other as people and as actors, and it helped that we were pretty comfortable with each other. We had a great sense of safety. Eddie was always there. Sonny was there most of the time also. Randy was there. And then they would have just the normal complement of police officers when you're shooting in the streets in New York. We always felt pretty good. And we didn't get a lot of trouble from people in the street either. What you normally do in New York, you usually have problems shooting in the street. People don't want to know.
Well, just to cut in there, he's not very well known at this point. They're not like movie stars.
Yeah.
They became movie stars because of this film. But at this point, them going down the street, people wouldn't know who the hell they were, which is good. It's the same thing they did with Midnight Cowboy, which you brought up earlier, Chief. Dustin Hoffman, nobody knew who the hell Dustin Hoffman was at that point. So he and John Voight could walk around the street and do those scenes on a real street, guerrilla filmmaking style, and not be harassed or molested by people walking by. Oh my God, you're sitting. No, nobody gave a shit who they were. Taxi cab almost hit Dustin Hoffman. And you'll notice that he lost his list when he yells at that taxi cab driver. He is walking here.
Yeah, I'm walking here.
He's not talking like Ratso Rizzo anymore. He's talking like Dustin Hoffman. But they kept it in the film because it was just so real. One of those real moments caught on camera.
About movie companies, keeping them from their work or wherever they're going. I've always had bad knees. I have a steel knee joint and all that. So the running was difficult. I had been somewhat of an athlete, in the Marine Corps and one thing or another, but running in leather soled shoes in New York, and a lot of running, especially early on in the film. I think that was only 2 days when we shot in the subway. Strangely enough, Egan actually did that scene with the real perpetrator of the French Connection. And when he waved at the end of that scene,
right here,
kind of wave, evidently that was some acknowledgement that he knew he was being followed. And they actually could indict him because of that. That was quite a notorious scene.
That was what I've been talking about. I'm glad we watched
the chase
it.
sequence was, you read something like that in the script, and it's not really that detailed. That's all direction. That's all somebody's real idea of the way to make a film really move. You can't put that down on paper. Yeah, the car sequence was interesting because we worked on it a long time, 2 weeks or something like that. And it all cut back and forth between the elevated train up above and what was going on down below on the street. And I tore up a couple of cars. They had the street closed off. They had, police all over the place, closing all the streets coming in, and for about 4 or 5 blocks, so we could really get a run. And we were going, I don't know, 70, 75 mile an hour probably, maybe more. But what they hadn't figured is that the cars that were parked along the street belonged to people in the houses, and they were going off to work. So in the midst of one of these long, really hell for leather runs, suddenly out of the corner of my eye, I see a guy pulling in front of me. And bam, we hit like that, and it drove me into the steel upright of elevated trains and washed the car out.
Again, him doing some of his own driving stunts in this film.
Successful or not? None. And I've never had any idea in any of the films that I've ever done.
I said I was clean. I'm not gonna get stuck, am I? No, I said.
I don't think of them that way. I think of them as the work. I try to keep it on that level rather than think in terms of results. The result of the film, of course, it was well received. It made money. Everybody did well from it. My career just started then. I was really a second banana at the most. Bonnie and Clyde, I had a great role and everything, but it certainly wasn't a starring role. So it was a great boost for me. And
here's
Billy's
that moment.
Determination and my reluctance notwithstanding, got through it, and 30 years later we're still talking about it.
Which in itself reminds me, because I read his biography, and he had done an interview, and they just broke that interview down into a little biography. And the name of the article was in Reader's Digest, of all places. It was called "The Winning Wave." Was the last image of his father when he left them in Illinois, I think Carbondale, Illinois, was the image of his dad driving away, waving at him, and him waving back at his dad. And that kind of reminds me of that for some reason. Tom, Chief, your thoughts on that? Red shirt.
Well, I think, first of all, let me go back to the politics of helping production. If you're telling
you've done that, you've worked on film.
Yes, and that's lots of times the political leaders will get excited when you're telling a story that's positive. So here's a case where their undercover guys, Egan and Grasso, made this big, huge bust that was international news, and of course, it was done in New York City. And so when it's a positive story, even though there was always positive themes in this movie, when there's a positive story to be told, political leaders turn a blind eye to maybe cheating a little bit on permits and other things happening. Also, chiefs of police turn a blind eye to that if it makes their agency look good, a big bust like that. Yeah. So there is some politics to that. That's why I'm confident that the commissioner probably knew some things were going on that they shouldn't have been doing, but he did it anyways.
Yeah.
Oh,
go ahead.
The wave to me was and this is the to me the cool thing about the middle part of the movie, and it's what keeps it from becoming boring, because when they do their little duel on the subway train where one steps
that is a duel. I'm glad you said it that way.
It's a duel. It's a battle of wits. They both know they're in a battle of wits, and it's no longer just that the bad guy has made the cop following him. This has become personal for both of them, and each one is trying to outdo the other, wants to give him a little extra. So when the Frenchman finally gets on the train and Popeye's left behind on the platform, and he goes by and he gives him the little wave of the fingers, that's I got that, I'll take that point. And you can imagine him licking his finger and marking it on a chalkboard as one of it, point for me. And then the wave back where Popeye just gives him the little four-fingered.
Hey, remember me?
Yeah, remember me. So it's not just that this is a ridiculous surveillance where they know they've all been blown and they're watching the guys anyway, and the guys know they're being watched. It's one of those, they know we know, and we know that they know that we know type of things. But
Right.
it becomes personal between Popeye and the Frenchman to the point where Popeye gives him his own wave back there at the end there, and it really makes the middle part of the film. That you realize for Popeye, this has become personal. This is very much as personal for him,
And
the
I've always
Frenchman is
been
feeling the
curious,
same way.
and I wish we hadn't lost Friedkin, because I always wanted to ask him that final shot, because it's off camera. Was that something he added later? Was just Gene Hackman running off camera, the end of the film, going to look for the guy who's never going to catch. I've always wondered that, if that was something that he just thought of in the editing process. And I don't know. But I do want to go to this because I now see what Max Damon said. So let's go from the beginning. He says John Wayne was an FAG Miller. And I'm like, what? And he goes, that's from Repo Man. And now I'm like, okay. And Eunice and the rest of the Repo Men reply, the hell he was. There you go. Good stuff. Miller
That was a Robin Williams joke. That was a Robin Williams joke in The Birdcage. He's trying to teach Nathan Lane how to walk like a man. He says, walk like John Wayne.
John Wayne.
And Nathan Lane does an absolutely perfect impression of John Wayne's hands at the side, pigeon-toed, stalk forward, like we're about to see the pistol duel in the middle of the street. And Robin Williams bursts into laughter and tears, and Nathan Lane is so upset. He says, "Did I do it wrong?" He says, "No, I just realized that John Wayne is gay."
Ironically, also has Gene Hackman.
Gene didn't want to behave like someone he isn't. Weird thing for an actor to say. I agree. I thought the whole thing was weird. His issue with it was just really kind of off-putting, especially due to the fact, as Reed brings up here, you'd think a Marine wouldn't have trouble seeing himself in as a tough guy on screen. And followed up with, I don't mean that as a dig. It's an interesting insight into Hackman's perspective. And let me tell you something about Gene Hackman a lot of people don't know. When he was in New York learning to be an actor, his roommate was and best friend was Dustin Hoffman. And so he started rubbing elbows with that type of actors who are sensitive and very left-leaning. And that's how Gene Hackman became a left-leaning person. It was because of who he hobnobbed with early on in his acting career, learning to be an actor. He was there in that area where there was just a bunch of artsy-fartsy lefties living in that, Greenwich Village area,
Yep.
Notoriously known for that kind of people. So, what do you mean those people?
Yeah. What do you mean those people?
What do you mean?
Well, you had the Village Voice, which was the representative of the mentality of Greenwich Village back in the 60s and 70s. It was very counterculture for New York. And for somebody who, used to live and hang out and learn to act in Greenwich Village, to be in, now be on the the Bed-Stuy or Tenderloin or wherever, whichever neighborhood they were running through and chasing these guys. It was, that's a culture shock for somebody from that neighborhood. Whereas,
right.
Somebody from a conservative neighborhood in Manhattan going to down to the Village is like, yeah, we're going to go down and watch a blues thing, but keep your wallet close type of attitude.
Right.
Put
your money in your shoe. Always put it in your sock in your shoe. We're told that in the Army.
Just a new guy. Remember, this was the first starring role. He didn't want to be typecast, probably.
Right.
So that's probably part of it too.
And when you look at his career later on, you look at some of the roles that he played all the way up into the 90s, one of my favorites is The Package with Tommy Lee Jones.
Well,
and
you also have to remember that this was not the typical leading type of role.
Yeah.
Like we've been joking about John Wayne and stuff up to this point, but think about it for a minute. John Wayne never played anything like this up to this point. The closest you had would have been like the Clint Eastwood westerns and such. Like I said, we hadn't even seen Dirty Harry yet, basically, up until it come out. So like,
yeah, it was after this that Wayne would take his leap into the law enforcement.
that's what I'm saying. So like, I can understand from the perspective of, you know, not so much that he didn't want to play somebody that he's not, but he was probably looking at his image of like, look, I mean, I'm out here throwing out all sorts of like slurs and everything else, and this guy's an asshole and he's a jerk and he's breaking rules. And up to that point, you got to remember, like, cops were mostly like Adam West and Batman, right? Like even Batman is a deputized
Adam 12.
You know, like, yeah, like it was always, you know, in movies and television, it was by the book, or they were the bad guy, right? There was no gray area there at this point. So for Gene to take this role on, I could see that as a bit of a taboo, right? Because you're taking on a role that nobody else had really kind of done this kind of a good guy before. Like I said, outside of maybe
really,
the Clint Eastwood westerns at that point, yeah.
And by the way, I wanted to show you this picture, Tom. This is John Wayne in Brannigan, his 1975 cop movie. There he is. And look at that fucking pistol in his hand. It looks like a child's gun.
Yep.
That's actually a big weapon.
It was going to be bigger than Dirty Harry's gun.
I think that's a Python 6.
That looks like 357 4-inch barrel.
It's a 357 Magnum. It's a 5-inch barrel, and it looks like a child's toy in his hand. It's just, I forget sometimes how big John Wayne was. But you see, like, here's the real cops right here. This is Sonny Grosso and Eddie Egan together on the set during the sniper scene. I think this is the sniper scene, wasn't it? Where they're hiding behind trees.
Shootout at the end.
That's the real cops of the French Connection together in that shot, and I think that's fucking awesome.
It always drives me crazy. They're carrying these little chiefs. Just what the heck?
Yeah, the little
that?
38 specials. You know,
no wonder you guys didn't hit anybody.
We see these classic cops, tough, badass motherfuckers, and then you see on the news this week this over in
yes.
I know.
And I joked yesterday about it. I said they finally found the other frog brother.
Yeah, we used to have grooming standards. I guess we don't now. So
I saw that picture and I said, if I'm getting arrested, it's going to be by someone who has a better haircut.
Yes, I can't. Who the fuck shows up as a fucking deputy chief constantly?
Who hires them
with their hair
that
like
person?
that?
Yeah.
This is clearly a
They
DEI
get
hire.
hired because they are like that.
Yes.
Yep.
All I'm saying is Beavis from Beavis and Butthead transitioned.
and that's why their country's burning right now.
It's in bad shape. I've said it time and time again. Canada, I think, has gone too far. I think the UK went too far about 5 years ago, and they've gone past that point to where it's going to be ugly. It's going to get really ugly over there now.
We have this from Bush.
No, I already deleted it, sucker.
No, I think we broke Bush.
Well,
I am the Julio.
I saw this comment.
You
I saw
what
a comment on Twitter recently that I actually had already thought of, but I didn't post because I had no basis for it. But it's speculation. But the comment was, there are a number of people in Ireland who are quietly standing on the sidelines watching what's happening. And, you know, I don't even have to say who those people are. But yeah, because I don't know if you know, but in Northern Ireland, basically the Irish Republicans, the Catholic Republicans, and the Northern Irish, Protestants were actually marching together about 2 weeks ago
with the Catholics.
And when
that's what it took.
Yeah.
Well, I told you about my father, my godfather.
Yeah, when you say things are going to get a lot worse, I'll tell you what, you'll know it's about to get a lot worse when those people get involved.
Yeah.
When the Irish Catholics and Protestants get along. No, a few years back, I think it was like 3 years ago, I was on the phone with Father Weems, and he sits there and he says, "Well, you know what the fastest growing religion in Ireland is now, right?" I said, "No." He says, "Islam."
Yep.
And I thought he was like messing with me. And then I went and looked it up and went, "Holy shit, he wasn't kidding. It's a problem over there. And it's the government that's doing this shit." And and they're the ones who are threatening Americans now this week. You heard that last night, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
They're threatening to have us brought over to England to charge us.
And that was
I'm
that
like,
was the question.
The last time you tried doing that, what happened?
Yeah.
About the
That
fastest growing religion, Gary. That's Europe. That's the whole of Europe.
Yeah, well, I know, but he's Irish, so he's not going to know that about anywhere else. He's an Irish priest, for God's sake.
Yeah, that was a question that I had, and I'm glad that the chief is here. Is that illegal?
To what?
I mean, could the Brits
If somebody
extradite an
says
American?
something, yeah, if somebody says something online that's from another country, can they just have them charged and extradited over for that? No.
There's a negotiation.
Well, there's a way.
It depends on the charge. Depends on the charge. I don't think the U.S. would extradite for something like this, you know. So it depends on the
they're
charge.
saying that we're inciting the violence, and that's bullshit.
Yeah, and extradition, they have to. One, I believe that the laws have to be relatively consistent with what our laws, but you have to lay out your case. And generally, on an extradition, you have to have the case where it's way beyond a reasonable doubt. It's such a high bar. It's a high standard. Because I did one with Mexico, and we brought somebody back, and we had to put out our entire case for them to see, and we'd probably, because you're not going to send your citizen over there for a flunky case, right? And so there are some limitations on those agreements that we have. It isn't just anybody. There is some kind of legal review, and I would imagine our law, if it allowed it, would not allow, because then Islam, I mean, all these Muslim countries could have agreements with us and demand extradition for everything we do. So I don't think they could do that. That's not for that kind of charge.
Well,
it needs to be illegal in the United States as well. Exactly. They have.
Yeah.
If they committed a crime, it needs to be a crime here in the U.S. before we would arrest them and extradite them over. By the way, Bush, this one's for you because you've been so mouthy. And by the way, this is for Martin because you brought up Mexico.
You don't really grinds my gears.
So, but we need to get wrapping up here. God, it was a fun show talking about all this shit. I love this movie, and I'm glad we got to talk about it. I'm glad
I got to run myself, actually.
All right.
Any last thoughts before you go, Tom?
No, I love this movie. I wish I'd gotten to talk a little bit more about it, but that's all right. I had myself so quadruple booked today that it's not even funny. But yeah, I think
I made a joke. I said,
aliens. So
I made a joke with you. I said, or about you. I said, it's not even our Saturday. Watch, he'll show up. I said it last night, didn't I?
Because I love this movie. So yeah. I heard you.
Yeah, and I told you I love it. I love it when it's not Tom and Gary and Tom still pops in. I love it.
Yeah, I just love that. And everybody really enjoyed it when you popped in yesterday, by the way, Tom. It was really good. I appreciate that, buddy.
All right.
No Mouthy, okay, I'll stop helping.
I gotta
Fuck
run
you,
now,
Bush.
so.
All right, Tom,
See
you
you
take
guys
care, my
later.
friend. I'll see
Have
you,
a good
brother.
day.
Bye, Tom.
Bye, Tom.
And we'll have him back next week because we're going to be doing Alien, 1979. Even then, there are cases where the U.S. just outright refuse, like the case of a wife of a serviceman who drove on the wrong side of the road, killed someone, and fled home to America.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think he was
I
connected
would have
too, though.
tried it. I would have on that one. I mean, that's fucking vehicular manslaughter, for God's sake.
Yeah, that almost rose to the level of a diplomatic incident between the U.S. and the U.K. I remember that case.
I'm sorry, guys. Don keeps trying to call me.
Dude, you need to make a timetable for Dawn where you mark
good luck with that.
where you're on where you're live.
Good luck with that.
No, I'm going to do that. I'm going to draw down a timetable when to not call Gary. This is ridiculous. He has such a good timing of calling you exactly when you're
It's
alive.
freaking Don. That guy is unstoppable.
Don is the Don. He's like
but
the
he
mob,
likes
the
me.
head of the mob.
He likes me.
Don's
I would like to see his
great, man.
face
I
when I
love
give him
Don.
a timetable.
Just like you, he's retired police officer, detective, homicide, and he got caught in a situation. He's never wants to talk about it, which I don't blame him, because he got his leg shot off.
Oh,
well, he almost didn't survive that. So
yeah, it's one thing when he got shot in the ass in Vietnam. It was another when the guy shot his leg off. It's like fuck. He's a ballsy, gutsy dude, and he just doesn't put up with people's bullshit. He messaged me. Let me see what he says here. Just said okay.
Dude, Gary, just wrap the show and call the man, please.
Yeah. Fuck off. We always have to talk after the movie, and the movie ended after 2 o'clock or 2 hours, for goodness sake. But I want to take advantage and make sure that we get all of the comments in that we wanted to get in, and the chief I know has a very strong opinion on all this stuff. Also, having not just been in law enforcement, and worked on and for films, which that's an interesting angle, because I work at film, on films, but I tend to work from here and I telephone my shit in via the internet, and I don't have to put up with the weird fucking people, because they are fucking weird. I don't care what anybody says. I've had to work with these people, and they're fucking weird. And you just hear some of the dumbest shit come out of people's mouths. And, you expect something intelligent, because they always play the part of intelligent people, right? But then they'll ask a question like, what's it like shooting a gun? Kind of questions. Have you ever had a dumbass question like that?
You know what? No, not from them, but they get intimidated. They get when they're in uniform. I mean, I think I told this story.
Well, you're tall too.
I had to go do a speech at the Stella Adler School of Acting. Right, it's just outside of Hollywood. There were like 20 actors there, and I think, okay, I'm going to do a speech with a bunch of people. This is what they do for a living, right? But I had done competitive speaking in high school, so I was a decent speaker, and I just got into my role and did my speech, and I had them laughing, and they once I broke the ice with them, because I'm just this cop, and so I'm going, okay, there's this barrier between us, because they come from a different mindset, right? And
their mindset is they're from the left, and cops are bad people. They're mean and full of hate.
I just told a few stories about the area that I had policed, where their school was at, and things that I found, and it broke the ice, and people chuckled, and then I started talking about what I wanted them to do for me, which was to come in and teach acting in the LA County jail system. And they did do that for a little bit, but they come from a different world, and they're naive lots of times, because not a lot of them are worldly, right? I mean, they go to high school, I'm going to be an actor and actress, and that's the path they take, and they're and many of them are supported by their parents money wise, right? So they're not starving like Charles Bronson and other people who kind of worked their way into acting a little differently. So it's a different era nowadays, and so they just are sheltered, is probably the way. And they see themselves. I'm an actor. They'll, like, I don't know how many actors I stopped who were they were coming up in their career, or they were character actors or whatever they were. And you'd pull them over for something, and you'd ask them, well, where do you work? Well, I'm an actor. And my response was, okay, so where are you waiting tables? and then you get the correct answer, because that's the reality. People come to Hollywood and they bust their tail, and really only a handful of
I got to tell you, and it's not that I don't respect people that work in the food service industry, but I'm more impressed with the actors who worked as cabbies. Because that takes a little bit of balls to fucking do that in modern years. Because it's dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So, but I guess we'll wrap it up here. Shinatsky, any last thoughts? Deleted scenes, red shirt?
One last piece of trivia. the famous bar scene where Popeye lines everybody up against the wall. If you go to that address today in New York, it's a Popeye's chicken.
Get the fuck out of here.
And Popeye's chicken.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Wow.
And Popeye's chicken is named after Popeye Doyle. That was how they founded the company.
Things
So
are
there's a
looking good.
Popeye's chicken in the building, the room where the bar was.
And you know why he got that name, right?
The fuck?
His scowl,
He
right?
got the nickname Popeye because he always had his eyes wide open watching people.
Yeah.
And guys would notice how wide his eyes would get when he's watching people, really paying attention. And the other reason why is because after he would make an arrest, he would flex his muscles. And and they gave him the nickname Popeye from it. That's so fucking wild,
Okay,
dude.
I need to do some research now because Croatia has a fast food chain called Popeyes. I need to know if that's related.
Probably.
Well, I'm assuming it's the American Popeyes. It's Southern style,
Yeah,
Louisiana style chicken.
In fact,
No, it's
almost
very Croatian food.
3 or 4 months ago, I discovered the first Popeye here in Mexico.
Good chicken.
I will look into that. If they made it
And
to
I
Europe,
love the way Martin says it. He says Popeye.
Popeyes.
I'm not mocking you. I actually love, and I said it the other day, I love the way you say it. Popeye. I like that. Deleted scenes, anything?
Yeah, a great movie, still holds up today. Ignore what these like woke panty wastes have to say about it. It's very much of its time. I have little nitpicky issues with it here and there. That's no big deal. If you've never seen it, sit down, watch it. And you know, and we've always lamented these like one-off 2-hour movies. This movie is 1 hour and 43 minutes long total. And it crams a lot to that 1 hour and 43 minutes. And it's a fantastic film. And yeah.
Well, there you go. Shinatsky, last thoughts, my friend?
I guess it's me speaking from here, but I'm surprised they considered the movie so violent because, yeah, there's a bit of roughing around, but most of the movie is an
Well,
investigation.
by today's standards, it's not.
No.
Yeah.
And I got this message from you earlier.
It's hopeless. We'll never.
That was my advice to Popeye Doyle throughout the movie. It's
That was
hopeless.
your advice.
You'll never
It's
make it.
hopeless. You'll never make it. Anima, any
you're gonna
last
be a
thoughts? before
video
we go?
now, Shinatsky.
What did you
Oh,
think of the
boy.
film? Did you enjoy it?
I'm going to get kicked from the channel if I'm being
Go
honest.
ahead.
It's one of the movies that I watch for the show, and a week later I won't know anything about it. But for this movie, the music sticks out like a sore thumb because the fucking music was like
He
nails
hates
on
New York
chalkboard.
jazz,
I
man.
hated it. It's distracting. I wished for a mute button for the fucking music while watching this.
Well, Friedkin wanted something that sounded like the streets of New York, and so New York jazz is its own style, and that's why it's there. It's
Well,
because he wanted to
you
give it
know-
that authentic New York feel.
She's a classical music snob.
He was incapable of
Matinee,
looking ahead of
fuck you.
the
You're a
future
music nerd too.
and reading Anima's thoughts, going, I better not use this music. That girl known as Anima in the future won't like it.
It's not just the music. It's not just the music. I'm not a
Oh, I
fan. I'm
know there
sorry.
are people that hate that fucking music too, but I liked it because it fits the feel of the film. It fits the feel of the movie, so I liked it. But you know, to each their own. You don't like it, that's fine. That's fine.
I'm not
Let's
trying
see.
to feel bad because I can't get into a movie that won.
I don't want you
Oscars.
to feel bad. Stop it.
I'm
Nobody's trying to
I'm
make you
just
feel
saying,
bad. You're
it's
doing
not
it.
my kind of movie.
Whatever.
I'm trying to make Anima feel bad, so
You
I
asked my
apologize for
opinion.
that.
You get it, you idiot.
I appreciate it, sweetheart. I love you.
Also, I'm tired.
Lord Thoth, Penny, let's see, Josh Coe, Connie Cleary, let's see, Slasher Fred, Christian Delorme, Lester San Jose, the Skeptic Tank, also who became a member today. Thank you so much. Cam's
We need to start a name for him,
Cam's
Gary.
Crash Courses, Read by Nature. Courtney was here. Rod Thunderheart, Curtis, and if you guys are following Rod, he's got an amazing journey going on right now with physical fitness, and go follow him. I love what he's doing. Curtis Selby, awesome one. Let's see, Peter Rinkman Fanside, also known as Vinkman's Girl. Let's see, FKH 2005, C 2005, also known as Tim. Let's see, E. Clay Thomason, Jamie G. Voltaic Blood, Keely Chow was here, Boosh McFadden, Mephisto's Movie Reviews, who also dumped a lot of his audience over here. Thank you so much, Mephisto. It's so much appreciated. Canadian Spider-Man stopped in. I didn't say hi to him. Oh, damn it. I love that guy. Max Damon was here. And that's it. That's everybody. And also, deleted scenes wanted you to know that he had to mute for a while because somebody's mowing his lawn.
Yeah, that did happen. Yeah. Plus, StreamYard was giving me some trouble there in the first half of the show, so I had to.
It was a lawnmower day today because we also had our guy mow the lawn today, and I woke up to the smell. I love that smell. I forget what it's called. There's a name for it. And what it is, I learned this when I was a kid in Arizona. That I said something to my older brother. I love the smell of grass. He said, "You know what that is, don't you?" I went, "No." He said the name of it, and he says, "It's basically grass screaming that it's having its head cut off."
Yeah, that's what you told me as soon as you found out that I'm a vegetarian.
And I'm like, "Oh my God." It really traumatized me as a kid. I'm like, "I don't want to mow the lawn. It'll cry." Anyway, so that's it, guys. We're the fuck out of here. Let's see. Is there anything else I need to show before we go? I think that's good.
No, we're good.
Maybe
we're
what
good.
we're doing.
Do we have any breaches that we didn't do?
Nope.
Okay, we're good.
Just tell
Then
people
the only
what we're
thing I
doing
have
on
to say for our audience right now.
The following people are gay.
Bye-bye. Everybody have a good weekend. Have a safe. Don't get overheated. Stay hydrated. Oh, you want to get off my lawn? There you go. You got to get off my lawn.